And then he said, "Why, of course, Miss Moon Dancer. I would be more than happy to carry those bags for you." I nearly choke on the glass of water. I slapped the container down onto the table in the school courtyard and gazed in shock her way. Moon Dancer? I don't believe it. You mean to say that? Yep. She smiles devilishly, her pale features shining in the sunlight beneath flowing locks of red and pink mane hair. Shining Armor carried all 4 suitcases for me. He was really sweaty by the time we got to my room on the 4th floor of the hotel at the Equestrian Embassy. I squint curiously at her. Just how sweaty are we talking about? Oh, girl. She fans herself with her notebook full of homework. Not sweaty enough. Ah, Moon Dancer. This is... This is Twilight's older brother we're talking about, I say, nearly shrieking. Still, I'm having a hard time containing my giggles. For goodness' sake, isn't it enough that he agreed to act as bodyguard during your study program to the Dragonlands? You and your other students owe him your lives. Oh, Lyra, sweet cakes, don't get your bridle in a tangle. She waves a dainty hoof and shovels through a few notes. It was all in good fun. Besides, we were hardly in any danger. The Dragonlands is about as dramatic as a Saturday night in Trondheim, which is the least I can say about their lame excuse for an education system. She rolls her eyes before leaning forward and smirking at me. Besides, Twilight's big beau, best flank forever, was just showing off an extraordinary amount of silly machismo. It's his first year into being a guard, and already he thinks he can flex his horn and get us unicorn school fillies to melt. Ha! Well, I made him deflate big time, that's for sure. Moon Dancer, I stammer, my eyes staring wide at her. Did you... I gulp dryly. You didn't let him in the hotel room, did you? Nope. She smiles and sips at her own glass of water. But I sure made him wish he was. Ugh, you're so evil. Twilight's gonna kill you. Not if she keeps being Princess Leslie's third hemisphere, she won't. Hey, she's more than just an errand pony for Her Majesty. She's being trained to be a high-ranking sorceress. She's ranking with something, alright. Have you visited her room in the palace? Woo. Place smells like dust, old books, and back sweat. And I don't mean the sexy, shining armor kind. I swear, that filly's gone nowhere with being the princess's apprentice. She's still a sad little egghead who refuses to see the sunlight. Well, I still think she needs our support in everything she puts her heart and horn to, I say. She's been there for us in the past, Moon Dancer. Celestia knows her parents have as well. Yeah. She places her glass down and gives me a bored glance. So, how's plucking the proverbial string treating ya? I give her a smug grin. My musical education is going well, Moon Dancer. How is your quest to become a teacher? That's alright. Alright? Yep. Since you came back from the Dragonlands, I thought you had a newer, tougher curriculum to undergo. Oh, you mean advanced unicorn sociology? Yeah, that. Isn't that your minor? I don't know. I'm thinking of changing it. Really? What to? Kiss My Flank 101. Seriously? I mean it, Moonitsa grumbles. All the ponies in my class are total snobs. Cream of the crappy crop of Canterlot, if you catch my drift. Have they been giving you a lot of sass? Well, if they weren't a week ago, they certainly are now. She smiles with a wag of her eyebrows. On account that they lost all their tail hairs yesterday. I squint curiously at her. I don't read you. Some pony might know some pony who might know another pony who laced their luxury sheets at the rear of the class with superglue. She sips from her glass again and blushes slightly. And that some pony might be me. I blink, staring at it breathlessly. You're serious? Well, I'm certainly not Cinnamon. Moon Dancer! I squawk loudly, summoning several curious glances from the ponies surrounding us in the courtyard. How could you? What is this, magic kindergarten? You're 19 for Luna's sake. What makes you think you can do this kind of crap and get away with it still? The fact that I did get away with it. And those bratty, upstart snobs are now forced to walk the halls with their bare tails between their legs. She giggles wildly. They all made up a story about a bunch of diamond dogs sneaking into the dorm at night and slicing the hair off to sell to the zebra black market on Los Pegasus. Oh, jeez. That almost makes it worth it. I clutch a hook to my forehead and laugh until tears line my eyes. Oh, Moon Dancer, when will you ever learn? Oh, learning, she chuckles, her face red. If only I could sleep half as well. I don't know. You seem to have all your charm and spunk, as usual. But no, really. She continues to chuckle, but her laughter has become increasingly hollow, labored even. I have been bunking at Candlelight Heights. I chuckle a few more times, catching my breath. I look at her and blink. You mean the hotel? I certainly don't mean the asylum, though I wouldn't mind that one bit at this point. Wow. Why, why aren't you staying at home? Ever since you quit dorm life, I thought you decided to stick around the house. Because... Her laughter dropped off the edge of a limp smile. Because he's back. I stare at her. Slowly, my face grimaces. He? You mean... She sits calmly at her glass. My brow furrows. I squirm nervously where I stand. But... But that's... I shake my head and squint at her. He moved to Baltimore. He has a business there now. That was just an excuse. Moondancer is mumbling now. I don't know what's more alarming. The news she has just told me, or how rapidly she can switch from euphoric to deadpan. The world's full of them, Lyra. Excuses, that is. And Momsy's one of them the last one back out of hiding. But... I gulp and feel my forelimb shivering. But why? Pfft, why else? She exhales firmly, her mouth hardening into a frown. 'Cause she's a withered old tart who doesn't know how to keep her tail down. Moondancer! I hiss, looking over her shoulders at every pony around us. I lean in and speak hushedly. How could you say that? She's your mother. She's an idiot, Moondancer grunts. And I'm sick and tired of idiots. The only thing is that it makes no difference if I pull a prank on her. Her life is already the biggest joke there is, and I'm tired of it. She downs the rest of her water in a single gulp, and slaps the glass over the tabletop. So, as soon as I get a chance, I'm finding a place on my own. No more dorms, no more hotels, and certainly no more bullcrap. Moondancer, it can't be a permanent thing. I try to sound strong. It comes out as a squeak. Your mother, she has to be going through a phase or something. You know how it is for Ramiras that age. I'm pretty sure she'll kick him out in a week. And then what? She chuckles. But this time it is a dry and lifeless thing, like dragging a cat's tongue across sandpaper. She'll invite him back just a few months later, or else go crawling to Baltimore herself. It's the same old song and dance, and the music just won't get out of her dang head. She brushes a few stray leaves off her notebook before slapping and glaring at me. You know what the sickest part was? I spent the entire weekend yelling my head off at her about how pathetic she has let that jerk back into her house for the umpteenth time. And she has the gall to say that I'm being heartless, that I'm being a bad daughter. Moondancer, a bad daughter. Do you know what the heartless stallion used to do to me, huh? Did I ever tell you about the time he made me stand outside the balcony all night for wetting the bed, and slapped me upside the head if he found out I sat down even once? The friggin' piston would even sit there beside the window and watch me, like he had nothing better to do. Or what about the night you thought I spoke back to him, and so he filled a pot full of boiling water and asked which hoof I'd like to stick in first, for being such a petulant child? This is the same stallion my mother is choosing to respect over her own daughter. Who here wants to bet it's because he's always had one extra limb than me, as long as Mom's known the both of us? Okay, Moondancer, I mutter, stirring uncomfortably. You made your point. You're right. Oh, I'm sorry. She stands up, gasping with ridiculous melodrama. Is this too much for Lyra's little ears? You can't handle your best friend venting a little steam. I didn't say that, I exclaim, shifty-eyed. You know you can always come to me. Then why do you look like a changeling caught in a magical spotlight? I bite my lip. I don't say anything. I can't say anything. Apparently, this is enough. Fuming, she stuffs her things into her school bag. You know what? I get it. I'm ruining your precious lunch. Not like it's the first time. Moondancer, please. What? I'm sorry, Lyra. I'm sorry I can't make this day any more enjoyable for you. Celestia knows you can't make my week any less crappy than it already is, so don't bother planning to do anything about it. Not like you were trying in the first place. Hey, I frown. Now you're just not being fair. Aha! She flippantly laughs, grinning venomously at me from where she stands with her bag. Now that's a tragedy. Something in my best friend's life is not fair. Next thing I know, my other friend will become the pampered satellite to a princess. Her eyes go wide as she slaps the side of her head with a hoof. Oh, duh. That already happened. Oh well. I must have weighed down your high and mighty lies in my stupid baggage. You know, the stuff I only had to deal with for all my goddess-forsaken life. Moon Dancer, don't do this, I plead with her. Don't make a scene. You know I've only ever been there for you. Been there for me? She frowns. You've been there for me. She frowns even harder. As if you could somehow relate. As if anything you've ever done or said ever held any kind of sincerity. What do you know, Lyra? What crap have you ever gone through? Has a single thing in your life ever gone south and made you question your very own existence? You with your outstanding lyrical talent and your career in Camelot music history. The fact of the matter is, you've never been there for me, Lyra, and it's laughable that you think as much. Your parents bailed my mom and myself out, sure. But you? Did you really think that a bunch of slumber parties and stupid trips to the city park or local donut shop ever truly made up for the junk I went through? Life must be really dang simple for you, if that's how you clear your conscience of all the troubled ponies you've ever had to deal with. But, please, don't ever let me rock your perfect little world. That just wouldn't be fair, now would it? I bite my lip, avoiding her gaze. The light around us is turning foggy, and I feel a soreness in my throat that I know would make any sort of reply a mere whimper. She knows it too, and she scoffs at it. Yeah, go ahead and cry, she says. A little bit of warning for the wise. It only works for a little bit. She clenches her jaw and trots off on iron hooves. And I'm sick to death of only doing things halfway, like some pony I once thought was my friend. She leaves. The courtyard is quiet. I hear a brief stirring of nervous ponies, returning to their distant conversations and studies. It isn't until their host steps are completely out of earshot that I bury my face into my hooves and allow the tears to flow. I heard alabaster strings. I heard his gentle melody, his masterful reinterpretation of the finer movements of the nocturne. I heard every rising and falling chord that had marked the song that had saved me multiple times from the depths of the unsung realm, and yet it did not solace me any longer. I knew that I was not the Mary he had always meant to hear that heartfelt tune. Still, that did not stop me from playing Penumbra's Echo over and over again, adamantly and faithfully, with hope that some sort of peace would come. Hope, after all, has been the one thing keeping me alive in this place. It was the same thing that pulled the mad pony away from the roof's edge of the town hall building. It was what made me ask for a hug from an amnesiac friend who could never remember me. For a moment, it was what made me sit on the edge of the park on the side of town, anointed by the rays of an afternoon sun, with the crisp breeze of October circling soothingly around me, as if I was just any other blessed soul. For a second, I wondered if dust would someday cover my body when I no longer had breath to give, or if even in ashes, I would forever be an anomaly to the links of time. I heard a pitter-patter of hooves. Looking over, I saw 4 familiar foals. Scootaloo was drawing a red wagon, within which Applebloom was seated, wearing a ridiculously cute cape. She stared down a spyglass, licked her lip, and pointed adventurously towards the edge of a hill, while Rumble and Sweetable caught up with the pair on waddling limbs. They glanced at me as they scampered by. Then, in a second breath, they looked to my side and grimaced. With mutually blushing expressions, they hid their faces and hurried along. I raised a curious eyebrow at that, until I heard a rasping voice behind the bench upon which I was squatting. "That's a relaxing song." I turned to look. My heart skipped a beat. Awkwardly, I smiled. Funny. I had another colt your age say the same thing the other day. "What?" Snip squinted up at me. "Do you perform around town? Like a traveling minstrel or something?" 'Cause we had a show pony around Ponyville once." His ears drooped. "That didn't turn out so well." "Don't your parents ever warn you about talking to strangers?" I asked. I almost immediately winced for doing so. He raised his chin and horn, and marched across the path before me in an extraordinary show of pride. "I can look after myself. I'm not a little fool, you know. I've got a cutie mark." I looked at the symbol in question, but was instead distracted by a brand new limp to his gait, a limp that he tried in futility to hide. My ears twitched at the memory of the sound his body made after being tossed across a condominium. "You certainly seem like a tough little pony to me," I remarked, trying my best to maintain an adult smile. "Since when did Rough and Tumble Stallions trot clear across the hillside at the sound of sweet music?" "I didn't trot across the hillside. He fidgeted, gnawing on his lip. His face hung towards the dirt path. "Meh, I was just killing time." I looked at him, at the grassy fields, then at the bright blue sky. Seems like such a beautiful day. I glanced Snips's way again. Don't ponies usually see you hanging out with another colt? Some lanky fellow? Hmm? Oh, you mean snails? He shrugged his stout shoulders. He's off chasing bugs or something. I don't know. Well, it's a shame to be alone an afternoon like this. I strummed a few more notes at Penumbra's echo. Why not go and see what he's up to? Hmm. He dug at the dirt inside. You ever have a day when you just don't want to see other ponies? I smiled a bit more genuinely. You're seeing me, aren't you? Well, you play such good music, miss. He looked up at me, and his eyes were bloodshot. It appears as though I wasn't the only soul in Ponyville dealing with insomnia. And it's not like any pony's paying you or forcing you to do it. You're just doing it because you like to, don't you? I mean, why else would you be here? I took a deep breath, shrugging. Silence is hardly a fitting friend. He chuckled lightly, then gazed at the grass bordering the path. That must be a really cool special talent to have. What, music? Mm-hmm, he nodded, flicking at the emerald blades and upsetting a few leaping aphids. All I got on my flank is these stupid scissors. I still don't really know what they mean. So many ponies my age want to get a green mark so badly, and I don't even know what mine's all about. Isn't that stupid? I leaned forward, narrowing my eyes. Don't you have ponies where you live to share these thoughts with? His nostrils flared and a frown crossed his face. Nothing's gonna change the fact that I have a lame talent. He looked up at me, and his expression was once again soft. I don't know why, but when I hear that music, I don't feel so bad anymore. Even if it's your talent and not mine. There's something very relaxing about it. Too bad I can't make that kind of sound with scissors. I looked at my lyre, running a hoof over its smooth edges. Music is a lot more special than we give it credit for. It was part of the foundation of the world, after all. It's older than both talents and feelings combined. I chuckled slightly and looked at him. I really don't blame you for being drawn to it. You mean I'm not bugging you? He asked, his stubby tail flicking anxiously. 'Cause, I was just walking around and, meh, I don't know. Just relax, I said. My lungs exhaled peacefully, as I heard myself say, a song is never meant to just be played, but to be heard. I smiled for myself, as much as for him. I was hoping to have an audience. Huh. He sat on his haunches, wincing slightly from the fresh bruise, but nevertheless smiling. Would you play that song one more time? That is, if you don't mind. I shook my head. I would love to. I began strumming Penumbra's Echo once more, and already I could see Snips's eyes closing, as his ears relished the soft melody. The world we live in has so many joys, I said beneath the lulling rhythm. We should never, ever feel guilty for wanting to be happy. I took even breaths, squinting from where I crouched behind a tree in a cluster of bushes. Just beyond the nearby length of fence, the condominium with the straight-edge household lingered under a waning sunset. Hours after treating Snips to as many renditions of Alabaster Song as I could, I had followed the colt from a distance while he wandered around Ponyville before eventually, hesitantly, returning to his home on the edge of downtown. My body was tired, and my eyes were dry from 3 nights of very little sleep. I couldn't deny a sharp tremor that was shuddering through my system. What was I doing there? Being cursed didn't give me the right to act like a stalker. My only consolation was the firm knowledge that Snips wasn't the pony I was looking for. Finally, I saw my target. Straight Edge. The grizzled stallion was trotting home, or at least he was trying to. He swayed a bit in his step, his hooves shuffling in an inebriated pattern that I only found moderately surprising. After several minutes, he stumbled up to his front door. His shoulders heaved in an exasperated sigh, as if he had instead showed up to the worst night job imaginable. After telekinetically lifting a pair of keys up to the door, he marched into the dimly lit condominium and slammed the entrance shut behind him. I took a deep breath and gazed around me. The sun had completely set. The stars were coming out overhead. Crickets were signaling through the air in a denser and denser chorus. There was no pony around to see what I was about to do. On stealthy limbs, I hurried towards the front lawn of the straight edge household. I opened the fence gate and slid up to the entrance, hiding my body safely from the windows. I pressed my ear up to the building front, My heart was pounding. My coat hairs were standing on end. In over a year of haunting the links of Ponyville, I had never done something like this. True, I had helped myself to the interior Twilight's library on occasion, but she was my full-head friend, and every occasion that I stumbled upon a place of research, it was to acquire more important reading materials, or do more study on the Nocturne, or playing the Song of Summoning. But this was trespassing in the worst possible way. The same spirit that kept me from robbing Rarity blind, or stealing Rainbow Dash's thunder, or taking advantage of Applejack's hospitality, was slicing a dagger of guilt across my heart. I almost pulled myself away after 20 minutes of hiding there, when I finally heard what I came for. Winsong's unmistakable sob sounded off first. It was followed by Straight Edge shouting one horrible thing after another. Snips's voice rushed to the sounds Winsong was making, and then Straight Edge shouted some more. For the briefest of moments, Autumn's whimpering breath tried to intervene, but Straight Edge's growling drowned her out, followed by the sounds of bottles breaking. A dog 2 condos away started barking. I took a deep breath, and felt a tug on my lips. I was smiling, for I now had what I needed. Swiftly, I turned away from the door front, and ran like an emerald lightning bolt across Ponyville. Inside the front lobby of the Ponyville Police Department, one stallion in blue finished polishing his horseshoes, while murmuring across the lanternlit station. And so I said to him, "Sir, unless your neighbor's socks have the magical power of breaking the laws of probability, I sincerely doubt they sprouted hooves, climbed out of your neighbor's hamper, and somehow made it to the drawers of your work desk across the street." Another officer flipped the pages of his newspaper from where he lazily sat behind a counter. Blessed Celestia. Is that when you arrested him? Dang straight. Turns out the old pervert was stealing the lady's stockings for months. This thing that old stallions have for Ramiras' socks. The other shrugged inside. I just don't get it. Right then, the doors burst open. The 2 officers stood up abruptly and spun to look. Can we help you? I stood, panting, and gulped. Yes, you can help, but not me. Somebody else. There's a house in trouble on Burton Street. Could you be more specific, ma'am? I wish I could, I exclaimed, my eyes glistening as I raised 2 shaking hooves up and toyed demurely with my cyan locks of mane hair. I heard some horrible noises and yelling. I think there might have been a robbery in progress. I was walking by one of the condominiums when I heard the most terrible racket. I was so scared. You gotta go investigate. The 2 officers exchanged glances. With a firm nod, they bolted up, grabbed their equipment, and rushed out the door along with me. Don't worry, madam. We're on it. Just show us the way. I watched them, stifling a proud smile. I cleared my throat and broke into an anxious gallop. Oh, thank you, officers. Thank you so very much. Here, right here, I exclaimed a few minutes later, pointing shakily at the front lawn of the Straight Edge family's household. I was walking past the sidewalk when I heard the noise. One officer murmured, adjusting his hat as he stepped up to the fence. The front gate's still open. Oh, yes, I fidgeted and smiled nervously. Must have been a robber. We'll take care of this. Please step back. One of them marched up to the front steps. As he did so, a few muffled shots rattled the windows of the home. I was both terrified and jubilant all at once. Hello? The officer knocked on the front door. This is the police. Is everything all right in there? Again, there was a wave of noise. I instantly detected Straight Edge's growling voice. Winsong was whimpering. Or perhaps it was Snips. I no longer cared. Everything was collapsing and coming together in beautiful poetry. I repeat, this is the police. Please respond. The officer put his ear against the door. He frowned. He looked back and gave the officer a firm nod. His partner patted my shoulder. Stay here. He whipped out his baton and gripped it in his teeth as he galloped up to the steps. On 3. The other officer pivoted around, coiling his rear legs. 1, 2, 3. He bucked the doors open, snapping the hinges. His partner rushed in as he shouted, reaching for his own baton. Every pony freeze! This is the police! Gripping his own weapon, he rushed in after his partner. I stood outside, squatting on my haunches, waiting. A minute went by, and all was silent inside the condominium. I took several jittery breaths, fiddling with the stone gray sleeves of my hoodie. More minutes passed by. All I could hear was crickets. I started to panic. Did Straight Edge do something horrible to his wife and children? Did he turn out to be too strong of a stallion for both officers to handle? Oh, dear Celestia, I murmured out loud, as a sharp chill ran through my figure. Could I have inadvertently traumatized Snips and his little sister? I knew that Straight Edge was asking for it, but did the Colt and filly really deserve to see two grown ponies tackling their father to the floor? Could I possibly give Autumn another seizure? Worry turned to despair, and despair turned into action. Hesitantly, I trotted up the path and approached the door to the room. Officers? I heard nothing. I looked through the dimly lit foyer, seeing the paintings and furniture and normal bric-a-brac of domestic life. Is everything okay? Okay, so I confess, there wasn't a robber after all. I gulped and trotted deeper into the household, my breath coming out in vapors. But you needed to see this. You needed to stop this from getting any worse. I froze in place. The two officers were standing casually straight edge in the center of the living room, sharing glasses of lemonade. Autumn was sitting on the couch, cradling a sobbing windsong. Snip squatted on the bottom step of the condo stairs, staring lethargically into the carpet. Yeah, but the Wonderbolts are so out of shape this year, one of the officers said with a smirk, while swirling his glass. On account of Fleetfoot and Mercury having gone on tour in the Griffin Lanes back in spring. Those darn Griffins never cut Pegasi a break, Straight Edge said in a grumbling voice. The corner of his grizzled face curved upwards. Fleetfoot and her buddy never got to show off, and they just hung around pony hotels waiting for the Griffins to kick them out of the country so they can get back to real work. Shoot, I don't even know why Karen borrowed the exchange program to begin with. Yeah, those two big morons they borrow can never fly information anyways. Thank goddess they showed up after this year's Best Young Flyers competition, not before. One officer took a sip, turned, saw me, and nearly spat out his drink. Ahem. Can we help you? I stood dumbly in place, squirming. Straight Edge's eyes were thin. She must have seen the door from outside. Nothing to be alarmed about, ma'am, one officer said, waving at me. An honest-to-goddess mistake on the force's part. I swear, I've been on the beat for 15 years, and I've never done anything like this, the other said. I promise you, Mr. Edge, the department will pay for the damages. Hey, nothing I can't fix myself. It's good to know that you guys are always around at a moment's notice. Yes, Autumn stammered, trying to get Winsong to calm down. It's nice having the police close by. That's just what I said, honey. Straight Edge growled lightly. This can't be right, I exclaimed, my lips quivering. I frowned at the officers and pointed at the walls of the room around us. You mean you just charged in here and saw nothing going on? I knew I heard shouting. That was probably the poor fool here being scared by Ponyville's finest, an officer said sheepishly. If the lieutenant doesn't chew us out for this mix-up, I don't know what will tip him over. I don't know what's gone into us, the other remarked. I suppose it's these late-night shifts, you know? 1 second you're at the station, and the next you're swinging a baton around at loud noises. This town's made basket cases out of all of us. What with Nightmare Moon, Ursa Minors, and Paris Sprites. Hey, didn't I tell you to forget about it? Straight Edge chuckled. If anything, you've made my evening more exciting. It certainly shook me out of the damnedest stupor. I think I got the energy to get some work done around here for a few hours thanks to you guys. But... I blinked, then frowned, then snarled. No! I stomped my hoof. This is wrong. Things aren't right with this household. Excuse me? Straight Edge glared daggers my way. I almost stumbled back from that. Almost. Ma'am, please. One officer put his glass down and marched firmly towards me, his face serious. I understand if you or any of the other neighbors may have been startled, but this has all been nothing more than a terrible misunderstanding. No, you just don't know anything. You've forgotten. All of you. I started panting. I pointed a heavy hoof towards the mare and her child. Why are they so freaked out, huh? Why is she still crying? Straight Edge sighed and looked lethargically at the two police stallions. Officers, it's really late. Could you do us a favor and... He gestured towards me with his head. Ma'am, if you would come with us... Snips! I pointed at the Colt. He jolted from the sound of his name. Ask him what's been going on in this household. Okay, that's quite enough. How'd you get that limp, Snips? I almost shrieked as the first officer grabbed my shoulder. I tugged away at him and pleaded with the youngster from afar. And those bruises on your face! He hugged himself, scraping his hose across the carpet. Snails, and I got into a fight. Ugh. Straight Edge rolled his eyes. Darn kid. Snails? One officer made a face. Autumn shivered where she sat. His friend from school. I frowned. He's lying. She is too. They're afraid. They're afraid for their safety. Can't you see that? As the one officer tried pulling me towards the entrance, I grunted and shouted at Snips. You didn't have those bruises earlier when I played that music for you, Snips. How did you really get them, huh? Snips gulped, looked at his father, then flinched. I've never seen this unicorn before. Honest. I felt all the color leave my sweaty face. I think you need to come with us down to the station, the stallion uttered, tugging at my forelimb. I snarled and summoned a burst of magic. A shield of protection energy bubbled away from my horn in a green flash. The officer gasped, not even remotely expecting such a show of power. Before he could recover, I was galloping out of the household and charging into the cold Ponyville night. My eyes twitched with fury, and my ears rang with the thunder of my churning heartbeat. So let me get this straight. Rainbow Dash squinted from where she hovered above Twilight Sparkle and Applejack in the town library the next day. You've lived in this town for over a year, but no pony's ever known about it because you got some mystic curse that keeps any soul from remembering a single thing about you. And instead of trying to get us to help you fix this craziness, you're asking that we investigate some stallion beating up on his kid? I took a deep breath, stood tall, and firmly nodded. Yes. Rainbow Dash pivoted and looked at her two friends. Now can I say it? Applejack muttered. Reckon you can, Sugar Cube. Rainbow Dash spun and hissed at me. Horse feathers! I sighed and rolled my eyes. I was low on sleep, strength, and sanity. It took a cosmic effort to stand upright in the midst of these mares, much less keep a sane expression. Of all the crazy, lowbrow, lame attempts at grabbing attention, Rainbow Dash hovered circles around me, tossing accusatory glares. Her incredulous rambling was of little comfort to my frayed nerves. Your randomness makes Pinkie Pie look like a college professor. Oh, so you heard about the elements of harmony. So you've heard about Twilight Sparkle, the magical apprentice to Princess Celestia, and how she and her bestest friends defeated Nightmare Moon. And now what? You just want a slice of the popularity pie. I mean, hey, kudos on subtlety. At least you're not making us go on some global quest to a nocturnal locker on the opposite side of the world, or some other epically unrealistic crud. Still, this whole straight edge nonsense is downright creepy. Just how long you been sticking your nose into other ponies' business, huh? And making nasty claims of child abuse? Bah, this is a clean town, Billy. I'm Ponyville's eye in the sky. I would know this crap. I turned and looked coolly at her. And you would also know that the only reason you haven't already gone off to join the awesome Wonderbolts and leave everything else behind is because your new and altogether boring friends here in Ponyville have unwittingly filled the niche in your life, dissuading the biggest fear you've ever had, of being perpetually alone. Rainbow Dash's ruby pupils shrank as she fell flat on her haunches. What did you just say? She began to whimper, shivering like a foal. Applejack was frowning. Now see here, Missy. I turned towards her. And you, whose father was the inspiration for both the physical and metaphorical foundations you constantly lay down for yourself and the ponies around you. You just can't stop staring at this hoodie that I'm wearing, can you? Perhaps it's because deep down inside, Applejack, you know that there's a reason for its familiarity. It's the same jacket you once wore when tending to the orchards of your farm. You loved it because its color reminded you of your father's coat in winter, when he held you close and sang you songs passed down for half a dozen generations. Applejack's face paled as she pulled her hat off and held it close to her chest. Land's sakes. And you. I pivoted and smiled at Twilight, who flinched visibly. A pony who fears the greatest horror of all, being forgotten. When you came to Ponyville, and you saw the spark of friendship that solidified your place here forever, you discovered what it meant to cry tears of happiness for once. Beforehand, whenever you sobbed, it was always in the lonely confines of the Candlelit Castle study halls. But you never dared share your concerns and sorrows with Princess Celestia. After all, you had once told me, Starswell the Bearded was the greatest mortal magician who ever lived, and he died alone with nothing but his scrolls. You used to believe that a lonely existence was a necessary means to greatness. But since you found your friends here in Ponyville, a piece of you was willing to be forgotten by the equestrian history books, because you'd rather be happy in the now than to spawn it for the future. Twilight stared at me, her lips quivering. How? There isn't enough time to explain how, I said, leaning forward and smiling gently. All that matters is why, and the answer is, I want to help ponies, just like you do. Right now, we have an opportunity to do just that, but no good will come to Snips' family if we just sit around on our flanks. I stood back and gazed at the group as a whole. You would be completely different, completely lonely mares if you didn't take that leap of faith by becoming friends. But in doing just that, you turned into the three strongest, the three most dependable ponies in the whole of Equestria. Won't you take another leap of faith? Right here? Right now? Rainbow Dash was shivering. Twilight Sparkle sniffled. Applejack placed her hat back on her blonde head and gazed at the other two silently. They looked back at her. I don't see or hear anything, Rainbow Dash muttered under the fall of evening. Shh! Applejack exclaimed hoarsely, from where he crouched on the sidewalk outside the condominium. There was a light inside and shadows shuffled within. Remember what Miss Heartstring said. Give it time. Apparently the straight edge felt like it's all hot-headed at random. I still think it's really weird, Rainbow Dash remarked, frowning. Not to mention really uncool. I mean, we're totally spying on other Ponyville ponies, in their apartments. If you're afraid, then go home, I grunted sullenly. Lyra, Twilight whispered to me. That wasn't very nice. We're taking a leap of faith for you, after all. I know. I sighed and ran a hoof over my exhausted complexion. And I'm sorry, girls. It's just... You won't believe what I've gone through to try and intervene on this family's behalf. And you all mean to suggest that neither Miss Cheerly nor the police could help any? I'm afraid not, Applejack. It's the curse, remember? It's just so much to take in, Twilight Sparkle remarked. The search for Scootaloo, the hotel collapsing of Rumble and Morning Dew, the parasite infestation. You mean to say that you were there for each of those occasions? Yes, I said, then winced. Though that last part would take a really, really long time to explain. And even then, I'm still a bit sketchy on the details. I saved Scootaloo. Rainbow Dash gulped and foolishly gazed at our two friends, her wings drooping. Didn't I? She almost whimpered. Shucks, girl, Applejack remarked, fanning herself with her hat. Next thing we know, y'all gonna tell us you're responsible for getting Wimblesler and Caramel hitched. I grinned wickedly and doubled over. Rainbow Dash made a face. What's so dang funny? Oh, I mumbled into my hooves. I really need to get some sleep. Twilight, darling, Applejack looked at my full-hooded friend. You sure this spell is helping us blend in with the shadows all good and proper? For the millionth time, yes, Applejack, Twilight Sparkle replied. Unless Princess Celestia herself shows up and lights up this part of the neighborhood with her horn, we're darker than a thundercloud. No pony will see us all sitting here. Good, Applejack shivered. I reckon it's a might round feeling to be sitting here all incognito. You said it, girl, Rainbow Dash added. Twilight Sparkle stirred nervously. She glanced over at me. Miss Heartstrings? I tiredly gazed at the household, with bloodshot eyes. Yes, Twilight. Assuming everything you've told us is completely true, and it is. Right, absolutely. She cleared her throat. This curse sounds like an awful ordeal for any pony to go through. Could it be possible that, between the fantastical task of being chased by an undead alicorn and trying to learn a forgotten magical symphony, you've simply imagined this little detail about Snips' family? I know what I've heard. Applejack poked in. Heard? I sighed. Seen and heard. Heard and seen. Look, this straight-edge stallion is bad news, and no matter how horrible my situation is, I'm not going to let a tragedy like this slip through the cracks. It just isn't fair. This world. I grimaced as memory shot through my head. In a blink, I thought I saw the misty side of a school courtyard beyond a veil of tears. It looked too eerily similar to a rainy candlelit street beyond a shadowed stairwell. Groaning, I rubbed my forehead with a pair of hooves. The three mirrors shared nervous glances. I could already sense I was losing whatever threadbare confidence of theirs I had earned thus far. Twilight, I muttered, tilting my head back up. You remember Moondancer, right? I mean, You remember what she went through? A sharp breath escaped from Twilight Sparkle's lips. Her violet eyes began quivering. You knew Moondancer? I blinked, my heart beating hard. Oh dear, sweet Celestia. I forgot. I always forget about this little part. Ahem. I smiled nervously at her. You told me about her. You know, during our past meetings. And since I've forgotten, Twilight Sparkle nodded, begrudgingly accepting that. She sighed and murmured, Just how much did I tell you about Moondancer exactly? I swallowed and said, Enough. I placed a gentle hoof on her shoulder. You remember how much your parents, Dusk and Stellar, helped Moondancer and her mother Satin in their time of need? Twilight slowly nodded. How could I forget? I was really young at the time, but I became close to Moondancer later. She smiled gently and glanced towards Applejack and Rainbow Dash. She was the one friend I had long before coming to Ponyville. A sharp ping surged through her system. But all of that has changed now. Do you still love her? Twilight flashed me a look. She blinked a few times, and her eyes became moist. Of course I do. I suppose I always will. In a way. I smiled gently. Could you imagine how her life would have been if she never knew you? Or if her mother never knew your parents? I mean, I gestured while speaking. What if Dusk and Stellar overlooked the little details? The tiny yet significant signs that things weren't very... I lingered, gazing briefly aside at the other two mares. Ahem. Weren't very happy in Moondancer's household. Twilight chewed on her lower lip. I shudder to think. Twilight, I said. We are not just strangers in this world, or mild acquaintances, or even simple neighbors for that matter. We are all placed on this planet for a reason. I mean, we are all crafted out of the same song, molded out of the same chorus that sang creation into being. It is our duty, no, it is our nature to reach out to each other when we notice a great problem that needs to be addressed. Even the most horrible curse ever conceived by Ponydom can't change the fact that we are meant to be the living salvation of each other, chasing away evil, blowing away the ashes of chaos with our righteous breath of harmony. So, you see, helping Snips and his mother and his sister is like your parents helping Moondancer, because it's all part of the same glorious movement, like a beautiful instrumental that knows no end. Twilight Sparkle stared at me. Slowly, she gave me a very gentle smile. You're frickin' high, Rainbow Dash grunted. Rainbow! Applejack hissed. Jeez, just listen to this lime green fuzzhead, Rainbow Dash whispered, gesturing wildly. Have you ever heard a pony say so little with so many stupid words? We ain't here to be judging no poetry contest. Ugh, I hate all this waiting around. Either let's bust some guilty, child-abusing heads or go home. Goddess almighty. Shh, Twilight exclaimed, raising her hooves as she tilted her gaze towards the house. Did you hear that? What? I exclaimed, jittery all of a sudden. Give her some of your room sugar cube, Applejack said, resting a gentle hoof on my shoulder. Even Rainbow Dash was leaning forward, craning an ear when she hovered forward. Her eyes circled around the edges of their sockets. Suddenly, there was a sharp cry, followed by a heavy thud. Her wing feathers stood on end. Horse apples! Sounds like a hog wrestling contest in there, Applejack added, her features hardening. If only it was, I muttered icily. I glared at the three. Still doubt me? Twilight Sparkle gulped, her body jolting as several more shouts echoed from the condominium a few steps away. Is that actually Snips' father? Stick a feather in my eye, Rainbow Dash hoarsely exclaimed. Sounds more like an angry dragon. Hey, if there's something I can't stand for, Applejack grumbled angrily. It's a self-respecting parent tossing his own youngins around like bales of hay. She adjusted her hat to add shadows to her glare, and turned towards us. Reckon we should fetch the cops. Didn't you hear Miss Heartstrings earlier? Twilight retorted. It didn't work last time. Nothing good will come out of this if we just repeat what I did previously, I said, trying to keep my cool as the windows of the house rattled again and again. What I need for the three of you is to witness this all at once. My body was assaulted with a sudden chill. I saw vapor spreading from my muzzle. My eyes twitched. Oh no. What is it? Oh no. I leapt into Twilight's face, and all but yanked at her mane. Who am I? Lyra heartstrings, she exclaimed. What's going on? Applejack started. I turned towards her. Say my name. Lyra. I flashed a glare at Rainbow Dash. And you, Fuzzhead. Rainbow? I mean Lyra. She shook her head wildly. Seriously, what's the big deal? Pray, Celestia, I moaned, then frowned. There isn't much time. It's now or never. For what? No questions. I tugged at Twilight again. You gotta teleport us in there. What? She flinched from me as if I had the plague. Are you nuts? Just about. I can't risk this curse and doing everything right now. Every pony calm down. Let's just mosey up to the front door and do this all civil-like. Another cry came from the house. Yeah, screw that, Rainbow Dash said. Twi? Okay, but this feels like a bad idea. She started to concentrate, her horn glowing hot. Just do it, I growled, my bloodshot eyes quivering. Before it's too... There was a bright flash of lavender light. The shadows of evening dissolved in a blink, and the four of us landed in the straight-edge household's kitchen. Glass bottles, porcelain plates, and metal silverware settled all around us. The air was sour with the smell of alcohol, and I was seeing stains on the carpet that weren't there the previous day. Late, I murmured, freezing on the sight of what was before me. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, and Twilight Sparkle were identically still as statues. Straight Edge was levitating snips in the air. There was a bright glow around his struggling colt's throat, and tears were streaming from his eyes. Autumn was draped halfway off the couch, her weak forelimbs stretching in desperation towards the struggle. In the far corner, Windsong was curled up in the corner, her eyes bright and full of trembling horror. Don't you ever tell me what to do, boy, Straight Edge was snarling. I know what's best for your mother, and I don't need none of your goddess-awful attitude. I'm the one working my flank off for therapy every day. Just what in the hay have you ever contributed? Straight Edge's eyes twitched, then locked on the four trespassers. He hiccuped, swayed, and merely growled. What in Luna's name is this crap all about? Applejack was pouncing across the room like orange lightning. You get your dirty magic off him, you mangy demon! She barreled right into him, head first. Urgh! The stallion fell back and crashed through the end table. Straight! Autumn shrieked. Windsong wailed. Snips fell limply towards the ground, only for Rainbow Dash to fly over and swoop him up. It's okay, little guy. I gotcha. What in the hay is the meaning of... Straight Edge gasped as a pair of heavy hooves landed on his chest. Urgh! No pony, and I mean no pony should be treating their own flesh and blood that way, Applejack snarled. What are you doing to my husband? Autumn shrieked. Lady? Rainbow Dash barked from where she cradled a sputtering Snips. You're dang lucky she's not kicking his lousy teeth in. Every pony, just calm down, Twilight exclaimed. She was shivering heavily. I had never seen her this scared. You come into my house? Straight Edge struggled and shoved against Applejack's pressure. You stick your mains into my life? I should be calling the cops on you stupid wenches. Oh, wouldn't that be a hoot? Applejack almost spat on him. I'd like to just see you rat yourself out of this, you varmint. Get off my husband! Windsong wailed even louder. Can somebody tell that filly to come? Rainbow Dash started to heat her in midair. Rainbow? Twilight stammered. What's wrong? Just so dizzy, Rainbow Dash muttered, almost letting Snips fall from her grasp. I looked at her, or at least I tried to. A breath of cold vapors was blocking my sight of the Pegasus. I gasped sharply, gritted my teeth, and yanked Snips from her hooves as gently as I could. It's happening already. Huh? Applejack looked up. What's happening already? Whoa, Nelly! Arrgh! Straight Edge was shoving the mirror off of him. I swear to Tartarus, you're going to pay for this! Applejack stumbled back and slammed into a china cabinet. Glass shattered. The shadows of the room swayed from a lamp teetering. Applejack! Twilight cried out. I was dashing over to scoop Windsong up. I planted her on my back and spun about. Twilight, get us out of here! But... She began summoning a force field as Straight Edge picked up a metal poker from the fireplace and stormed angrily towards Applejack's dizzy figure. Everything's gone to heck. Where do you think these kids have been living in their whole lives? I exclaimed. Hey! Rainbow Dash saw Straight Edge charging Applejack with a weapon, and immediately went into action. What's the big idea? In a blink, she was tackling the stallion to the ground, rattling paintings off the condo's walls with the impact. Darn it, Twilight! I exclaimed. We gotta get these fools out of here! This may be our only chance! Just as I said this, A frigid chill ran through the house. Oh, Celestia, please. Twilight was already charging energy through her horn. Just as Trade had shouted something and swung a hoof at Rainbow, the two of us are blowing away along ethereal ley lines. I clung tightly to the shivering bodies of Snips and Windsong. In less than 2 seconds, we stumbled to a stop against the side of a building across town. Ugh. Twilight rolled to a stop in the moonlit grass. She coughed and sputtered. I got us as far as I could. She winced and tried standing up. But Applejack and Rainbow Dash... They're stronger than the two of us, I stammered, hugging the two fools close and catching my breath. Oh, what matters is that these kids are safe. Kids? Twilight remarked, shaking her head wearily. I don't understand. Applejack, Rainbow Dash... Twilight, we both know they've got it covered. I stopped, blinking at her, noticing how she was rubbing her head as if coming out of a migraine. Wait. Just then, a bright light shone on all 4 of us. I winced and squinted towards what turned out to be the double doors of the town hall opening wide. My word! The mayor of Ponyville trotted out, gasping in shock at the sight of 2 unicorns and a pair of traumatized children. Several other ponies walked out with her, squinting and studying the awkward scene. What's going on out here? It sounded like a bomb went off. We're sorry about that, Mayor, I said. Twilight teleported us here. You see, something terrible has been happening on Burton Street and... Mayor? Twilight Sparkle stood up, blinking wide. Why are you up so late? We were having a late-night meeting of the City Council to discuss preparations for Nightmare Night. What, may I ask, are you doing out here in the middle of the street? It looks like you just fell from the sky. I don't know. She looked my way, then scrunched her face at the sight of the trembling, bruised unicorn in my grasp. Snips? Oh my goodness! What happened to him? Twilight, you... I gulped. I reached a hoof out towards her. Please, think carefully. I know you had to have retained something. Uh-huh? Twilight was trotting over. She and the mayor knelt down to examine Windsongs and Snips. Retain what? I don't understand. What happened to these foals? Hey, Twilight! Rainbow Dash's voice exclaimed. I gasped. I spun around and looked up high. The Pegasus was flying towards us, breathless. There you are! We need your help! What is it? It's Straight Edge! She exclaimed. Twilight gawked. The mayor and her fellow council members murmured in concern. Windsong and Snip sat up, shivering in fright. A part of me deep inside was smiling. You won't believe that! Rainbow Dash's voice cracked. There's been a break-in at his house. We think some pony nabbed his kids. I stopped smiling immediately. Oh boy. The mayor breathlessly stammered. Straight Edges and Autumn's children? Kidnapped? Twilight Sparkle raised an eyebrow and pointed at the 2 foals. You mean these kids? Rainbow Dash did a double take, her ruby eyes twitching. What in the hay? As she touched down, 2 figures trotted up from a moonlit block over. Twilight, there you are. Did Rainbow Dash tell y'all? Applejack was also out of breath. She brushed a blonde bang up beneath her hat and exclaimed, Something plumb evil's a hoof. Rainbow Dash and I just woke him straight at his house, like we came out of a spell. Next thing we knew, his kids were gone. It must be some kind of sorcery, Straight Edge remarked. I thought you ponies defeated Nightmare Moon. For Pete's sake, my family and I moved to Ponyville to avoid this kind of nonsense. We have to tell the police or else... The stallion froze his eyes narrowed rigidly on the 2 tiny unicorns in the center of the group. Wait a second. What the heck is going on here? I wish I knew, Twilight Sparkle remarked, gazing at all of the equines and trembling under the cold starlight. Applejack, Rainbow Dash, you mean to say that you woke up and straight at his house just now? Reckon it was on our way home from helping you at the library, Twilight, Applejack said. Plumb flummoxed if I know how we got inside his home. She scratched her chin. Ow, my limbs feel banged up something fierce. Whatever it was that knocked me and Rainbow Dash must still be out and about. Perhaps the children could shed some light on the situation, the mayor suggested. Windsong? Snips? Straight Edge stared down at them. You know what this is all about? Windsong merely whimpered. Snips was blinking dazedly, rubbing his neck with his hoof. Well? Straight Edge's eyes narrowed. Snips trembled, his lips quivering. I don't know. I stomped at the grass with my hooves, startling every pony. Snips, tell them! Tell them the truth! You don't have to be afraid of him! The straight edge cast me an awkward glance. Who's this crazy mare? Twilight started. I shouted again. Snips, don't let him intimidate you. You're surrounded by ponies who can help you and your sister and your mother. Tell them how your father throws you around and abuses your family. What? Straight Edge backtrotted, his face twisting. The hay? Rainbow Dash looked crookedly at Twilight. Twi, do you know this freaky unicorn? Ma'am? Twilight gently trotted towards me. I don't know who you are, but I think you should calm down. I shook her off, hyperventilating. I knelt down before Snips, pleading with him. Snips, please. Every pony deserves to be happy, especially you, especially right now. Tell them the truth. He bolted away from me, his eyes moistening. I'm scared. I want to go home. My heart fell. I whimpered. Snips, please. You're scaring me, lady, he whimpered, clutching his little sister tightly and shrinking away from my frenzied expression. Please, I just want to go home. I almost collapsed right there. The elder ponies behind the mare were murmuring hushly among themselves. I felt the shadows of Applejack and Rainbow Dash converging on me. Simmer down there, Sally. Seems like you're a stranger around these parts, but I reckon you might be able to shed some light on this recent kidnapping. Unless... Rainbow Dash's eyes grew narrow, as she hissed suspiciously at me. You are the kidnapper. I turned. I looked at Straight Edge. Perhaps it was the glint of the moon. Perhaps it was just my imagination. But I could have sworn I saw a Pearly Tooth smile. Everything turned to hot, bright emerald. As soon as the flash was over, half the ponies were sprawled out on the ground, including Rainbow Dash and Applejack. I didn't bother to hold them back up, for as soon as I let loose the magical discharge, I was galloping as fast as I could towards the north edge of town. The cold in my curse pelted me through each heaving breath. My hoodie was heavy with the sweat that had soaked in from my every pore. The world flickered with a kaleidoscope of moonlight through the trees overhead. The October breeze froze my nerves. Once I was out of earshot of the downtown area, I skidded to a stop and leaned against a park bench. It was a very familiar spot, a place where a tranquil unicorn had once played the gentlest of songs for a lonesome colt. There was no room for peace, no room for happiness, not for Snips, and most certainly not for this pariah. A low growl floated up my lungs, boiled through my throat, and exploded out my mouth. The rolled flash jumbled again. There was a crackle of thunder, like her furious wrath rippling across the unsung realm. And with a weight akin to the Holy Nightbringer, I unleashed a wave of unbridled magic ahead of me. The bench shattered to wooden splinters, splattering debris all over the grassy hilltop beyond. The only thing more distressing than one act of destruction was the bitter knowledge that any pony we saw the next morning would simply explain it away with some accursed excuse or another. Shaking my head and fighting the tears, I galloped towards my cabin. The threnody bled into the requiem. The strings of the Nightbringer ran shrilly, harshly, like my gnashing teeth. I lifted my head and glared into the swirling tempests. Lightning radiated all around me, but the thunder of the unsung realm was enough to drown out my shouting voice. Come down from there, I growled. Come down from your high throne and play Desolation's duet with me. The spears within spears levitated, loomed, but did not descend. Bolts of lightning illuminated several moaning ponies, crawling across the platform in the shadow of her lofty presence. Jets of water sprayed across the scene, and yet nothing changed. I am not asking you. I'm telling you. I hissed and sneered into the freezing gale. You're going to come down here and help me finish the nocturne, and you're going to do it now. Then I'll be out of your life, out of your mane, out of this damnable pit in the universe that you call a home. I know you don't want me around, so let's get it over with. Get your undead flank down here, and let us kill the music together. A ring of lightning boiled around the spear, coalesced into a furious branch of energy, and rocketed towards me. I clung heavily to the Nightbringer, summoning a shield around me that deflected all of her wrath. The concussive blast blew the rusted platform dry, knocking moaning souls off their haunches. I fought against the vaporous tumult, shouting over the ringing body of the Nightbringer. I will not sing your song! You will sing mine, damn it! Another strobe of energy bolted my way. I weathered the onslaught, fighting it back with my energy, grinding my hooves into the rust and grime below. As the thunder settled, I stared up, gnashing my teeth as tears ran down my face. I hate you. The spear slowly, gently flew away. I hate you! I screamed into the chaos between firmaments. Damn you, and damn your putrid symphony! Damn you and your booming voice and your shattered wings and your cold spirit and your pathetic neutrality and your holier-than-thou aloofness. It's no wonder that the only ponies you have to rule over are pathetic waifs. You're the queen of nothing but the heartless, thoughtless, trotting dead. Who in their right mind could ever possibly love you? Certainly not the cosmic matriarch. I think it's fitting that she dumped you inside this horrible toilet between dimensions. What kind of a goddess has so much power and so much strength and it doesn't lift a single hoof to make the world any better? What's so special and tragic about your life that you have to hide in here like a stubborn little fool having a tantrum in a room? The spear flew off, disappearing into the tempest, looming beyond earshot. Nevertheless, I snarled. You're selfish! You hear me? You're selfish and you're a coward! Maybe instead of rewriting history, you should think of improving the future. Your sisters are doing it. Why can't you? I clutched the Nightbringer to the point of breaking its bat. All I want is to be real, to make a difference, to help ponies around me. But you just can't have that, can you? You know what? I don't care how powerful you think you are. I have the Nightbringer, you insufferable demoness. I have all of eternity to scream at you. And so help me, if all you want is for me to be a ghost, then I'm going to haunt you until the end of time. You hear me? You will not have any rest in this pathetic grave you call a home. I won't let you rest. I won't let you rest, you stupid waste of a song. I won't let you. All was madness and cold. I sat upon the brink of the drowning abyss, shivering, standing on the only source of warmth I had left. And the source of that warmth bred a lasting scream to my lips as I tossed my hooves in frustration, grumbled, and played penumbras echo in the Nightbringer. I stood before my cabin, my hooves occupying the middle of the dirt road to the north of town. I was several feet away from my patio, but I couldn't bring my limbs any closer to it. I was perfectly still. Not even the lingering cold of the unsung realm made me shiver. There was a light from behind the windows, where I had left a lantern lit. I knew that somewhere inside, Al was either sleeping or inspecting his half-empty food dish. Perhaps purring, wondering when I would show up again. I couldn't see him. Not then. Not anytime soon. With a deep breath, I turned to glance at the morning light glowing over the edge of the horizon. I teetered briefly, remembering all the things I had been through recently, and yet still ignoring all the sleep I had lost over them. My hooves shuffled. I pivoted and mutely faced the path towards Ponyville. Ambrosia lifted her hard hat, wiped the sweat from her pale brow, then plopped the article back down in the afternoon light. Straight edge? Yeah, that fellow works with me all the time. He's a good laborer. It's not often that we have a unicorn who's willing to get his hooves dirty in our line of construction. Plus, I reckon that horn of his is pretty darn useful. What with all the machinery going on the fritz from time to time. Tain't no accident they himself a jackhammer for Cutie Mark. You feel me? I'm not concerned about how he works, I slurred, standing before her on the edge of a partially built house on the edge of town. Drills and hammers were sounding off on either side of me. I winced and tried to keep my hooves straight. I was wondering where he goes when he's done for the day. Hey, you alright, Missy? Ambrosia asked, her green gaze narrowing. Them eyes of yours are pretty dang bloodshot. I'm fine, I grunted. If you want to know the truth, I gulped dryly, brushing my mane straight with an errant hoof. I'm the stallion's neighbor, and his shouting is keeping me up at night. Shouting? Straight edge. Ambrosia made a face. You trying to say that things ain't all that peachy keen in his household? Does that surprise you? Well, Ambrosia shrugged, smiling awkwardly. He complains a lot about his wife nagging on him, but that's just usual talk, you know. It's custom to make jabs at our significant others, what with how much tougher our line of work is than most ponies. But I never thought much about it. Heck, even my cult friend has overheard us from time to time, and he snickered quite a bit. Look, can you just... I shook my head, sighed, and murmured. Could you just tell me, where he usually goes before heading on home? Because I happen to know for a fact that he doesn't return to the condominium until evening time. Well, Ambrosia fidgeted. There's really only one place where most hard-working ponies go when the sun goes down. I stood inside the atrium of the Copper and Crown Tavern that night. I'd never entered that place before. Upon smelling the interior, I realized why. The air hung in a hazy mist. In the furthest reaches of the dimly lit establishment, ponies coughed, muttered unintelligible words, and surrendered to deep mugs of ale. A record player was playing a crackling rendition of a 30-year-old folk song. The speakers were in need of repair, and the music that came out of them resembled the grinding of sandpaper. No pony seemed to mind. They all had glossy-eyed expressions, especially the closer they hovered around the bar at the lengthy end of the place. Two figures in particular were louder than the rest of the tavern's occupants. One of them was a pink-coated unicorn mare with even pinker locks of hair. The other one was the target of my insomniac escapade. Yup, Straight Edge smirked blearily, took a sip of his mug, and scratched his double chin. I was part of the crew that built the Equine State Building. I trotted catwalks and platforms with the best of them, riveting pillars into place with pure magic. All the Earth ponies had to follow my lead, of course. You know how it is with those poor saps. Without magic, they're as useful as mud. You said it, the unicorn cooed, batting her eyelashes. They must have really depended on your expertise. Darn tootin'. How's the sky rise in Manhattan from such a high place? Her eyes narrowed as her cheeks flushed. It must be breathtaking. Straight Edge took another sip, gulped down his ale, and smiled liquidly her way. Trust me, I know a thing or two about taking breaths away, and they both involve my horn. She fluffed her mane and leaned back against the counter. Do they now? I took a deep breath. Icily, I trotted forward. This place stinks, Straight Edge muttered. What? The bar or this country hick town? Both. Wanna go someplace that's really sweet, babe? Straight Edge asked. Someplace where it's easier to take your breath away. I hopped up and squatted on the stool next to the stallion. I'd not choose the couch. Autumn sleeps on it all the time, apparently. Straight Edge paled. The mare craned her neck and raised an eyebrow at me. I beg your pardon? I don't mean the October weather, I muttered without looking. My tired eyes blinked as I stared into the bar. I mean the name of a mare. A mare who happens to be this pony's wife. The unicorn squinted hard. She looked quizzically at me, then back to Straight Edge. I don't... What is this? Pfft, please. Straight Edge chuckled awkwardly. You gonna believe the first words that come out of the mouth of any dumb broad who trots in here? No, she muttered, then frowned. I suppose I gotta stick around long enough until I become a dumb broad to you as well. Excuse me. The mare grunted and dismounted from her stool. But you're right. This place stinks. I think I'll be leaving before it gets any more rank. She slowly left the tavern with a toss of her mane. Straight Edge took a deep breath. His fist scraped viciously across the bar as he swiveled to aim a glass-cutting stare my way. Bet you had your fun there, huh? Give me one good reason why I shouldn't bend your horn into your eye, lady. I know what you do to your children, Straight Edge, I droned. He stared blankly at me. Something wet was soaking his rear legs. He jumped, seething as he realized that he let his mug tip over into his lap. He slapped the container down onto the counter and brushed himself off before flashing me an odd squint. How did you know my name? You heard me just now, didn't you? I turned to stare unemotionally at him. I know what you do to Snips and Windsong. He was silent as stone. I saw no flicker of conscience in his eyes. That didn't stop me from murmuring onward. I know that you strangle Snips until he can barely breathe. I know that you pile all of your troubles, hate, and fear onto that poor colt's innocent head. I know that you insult Windsong's intelligence and stun her growth. On top of all of that, I know that you hide all of your ugliness, all of your cruelty, and all of your vices behind the facade of being a good husband for a poor unicorn invalid whom you stopped loving ages ago. As if you ever did to begin with. Straight Edge glared at me, his weathered features frozen in place. In the background, the record was skipping. The sound of scratching thundered briefly through the speakers, as the bartender flipped the disc over and trotted back to the bar. Another drink, Edge? Straight Edge mutely nodded, holding up his mug. The bartender filled his container, then walked up to me. I gently waved him off, and he went back to his duties. Coolly, Straight Edge took another drink, swallowed, and gazed at me. What the heck is this, anyways? I stared tiredly at him. It had been 24 hours of restless wandering before this moment came, and I could still smell the unsung rust on my exhausted body. I hoped to Celestia that he could smell it too. This is the closest thing you're ever going to have to a conscience, I muttered. You need to stop what you're doing. You need to stop destroying yourself. I don't know what grief you've been going through, or what pain you're trying to mask, but you are meant to be the pillar of your family. As soon as you let yourself collapse, your faculties and your strengths and your morals, your family will only cave in along with you. That's 3 lives that you could have been protecting, that instead you were throwing into the garbage. Autumn needs you more than ever. That was the reason for moving to this town to begin with, yes? Snips needs a father that can inspire him, not intimidate and anger the poor guy. Your frustration and your wrath, it is being channeled into Snips's peers and friends at school, and if left unchecked, it will turn him into a monster. And Winsong? The filly is young, innocent, and full of potential. She's an artist at heart who has yet to discover a cutie mark, and you're wrecking any chance she has to enjoy the most endearing, most pivotal moment of her young life. I finally pivoted on the stool and faced him, leaning forward with a sincere glint to my eyes. And what for? Another night spent hiding your anxiety at the bottom of a mug. Another night of yelling fits and domestic strife. I know you hate this town, Straight Edge. I don't know the reason for your hate, but if you took a step back and looked very carefully, you would realize that this town doesn't hate you. This place is full of love, full of hope, full of ponies who only want what's best for each other. Why can't... I choked down a seething breath, gritted my teeth, and whispered, What's so hard, so difficult, so goddess awfully challenging about the simple notion of accepting help, and admitting you need to change? Admitting that you're going about this the wrong way, that it's not too late to begin again, for your family, for yourself. Straight Edge looked at me, his nostrils flaring. He took another sip of his mug, exhaled, and muttered to the musty air of the place. You know, I used to believe in love. He stared at the edge of his container as he swirled it around in his grasp. His eyes were twin, jaded marbles. I used to believe in change. I used to believe in hope and prosperity and all that fruity junk. Heck, I was once as bright and colorful as you. I believed in all that crap so much that I buried myself into it. Autumn and I had a wedding. Both our families were there, smiling. There was celebration, cake, balloons. We had our honeymoon, and it was really, really sweet. And after that, you know what I found out? I blinked curiously up at him. What was it? What did you find out? He took another sip, sighed, and, with a snarl, flung the mug murderously into my face. The shot to my horn was electric enough to wake me from death. Instead, I fell to the floor amidst shards and suds of ale. My ears rang from my collision with the floorboard. Grimacing, I looked up through a trickle of blood to see Straight Edge's hose landing beside me. My vision trailed up his limbs until I saw a dragoness snarl to his face as he spat at me. That all mares are good-for-nothing leeches! Straight Edge's voice roared above the sound of the nearby patrons gasping. Acute magical disconnect is genetic! That conniving harlot knew she had it before she even started dating me! And a single year friggin' year into our marriage, she becomes a coughing, hacking fit. This so-called love you speak so highly about is what inspired me into being her lifelong money wall to begin with. Do I hate my children? You're damn right I detest those stinking brats. I hate every godforsaken thing that squirted out of her. Balls and chains are still balls and chains. No matter how cute they are, how much I sob their stupid heads off every time I teach them right. You want to talk about change? You want to talk about hope? Well, nothing's ever gonna get frickin' fixed so long as I treat me with the same disrespect as their worthless mother. That's enough, Edge, the bartender growled over the counter. I hadn't realized until now that he had spent the last 30-odd seconds trying to yell above the stallion's enraged voice. He gripped his hoof around what resembled a metal club as he glared at the drunkard. I don't care how horrible your missus is. You don't go tossing patrons around. Not in my tavern. I stared silently up at Straight Edge, my brow quivering from the fresh pain still coursing through my body. He stood, fuming, cracking the joints in his neck. As every pony nervously watched, he picked a saddlebag up from a nearby stool and fitted it calmly over his haunches. Eventually, he pointed at me and grumbled, I don't know what stunt you're trying to pull, lady. If it's the Bleeding Hearts back in Manhattan Social Services, then you can just take a hike. But if I find out that she sent you... If she thought this was her cowardly way of getting back at me, he leered as he marched out the door. I swear to Luna, they're gonna find both of your heads wrapped up in that dirt rag you call a jacket. He brushed past 2 patrons and kicked the door open with a rattling of hinges. Starlight briefly parted the haze and disappeared as the door shut on the stunned crowd. I sat up, running a hoof up and calmly feeling the warm blood crawling down my cheek. I looked at my stained limb. Like that punk even deserves a tap at this point, the bartender grumbled from behind. He sighed. I thought I left all that filth back at Mary Amy. He leaned over and looked down at me. Hey, you look busted up pretty bad. Can I get you something for that? My eyes returned to the door, and the cold October night lingering beyond. Ma'am? I took a deep, deep breath. Ma'am? Are you okay? Straight Edge marched down the center of Ponyville. The moonlight cast a linky reflection across the dirt and grass. Teetering left and right, he mumbled and growled to himself. His eyes blinked, growing progressively more tired with each flutter. He approached a series of closed shops in the market district. Every store was abandoned. Every light was out. A cold wind blew through the street, rustling dust and leaves across the emptiness. Friggin' bunch of dirt farmers. I swear to Tartarus. After such an eloquent statement, he reached back into his saddlebag and pulled out a steel flask. He twisted the cap off with telekinesis, his lips curving slightly. He raised the thing to his lips and took a deep swig. Ambrosia. I wonder if she tastes as good as she sounds. He swirled the flask and lifted it to his lips once again. Nothing went down his throat. Huh? He blinked, then realized he was no longer holding a container. Looking down, he saw that the flask had fallen into the dirt, leaking fluid everywhere. Oh, for Pete's sake. Straight Edge bent down to pick the flask back up. It suddenly shifted from him. He blinked, his brow furrowing. The hay? He remarked, his breath coming out in cold vapors. He watched with a slight shiver as the flask slid out of the street and into the shadow of a nearby alley. His face grimaced. In a drunken stupor, he gazed up at the night sky. He wasn't feeling a brisk wind. Nevertheless, Straight Edge frowned and marched directly after the flask. The darkness of the thin alleyway enshrouded him. He stumbled into a trash can or two, cursing under his breath as a rat squeaked and darted past his teetering legs. Marching over a pile of lumber, he squinted into the deep niche between buildings. Finally, he saw a dim glint of moonlight. There you are. Ugh, dang thing's probably covered in filth now. He walked over to the flask. He bent over to pick it up. And that was when the 2x4 slammed mercilessly into his rear fetlocks. Ah! He shrieked, immediately collapsing forward onto his chest. Straight Edge's muzzle plowed into the concrete. His entire body jerked as he tried to rock his weight back. The same 2x4 pivoted midair, spun with a glow of green magic, and slammed into the knee of his right foreleg. Goddess! He yelped, his echoing voice muffled by the height of the 2-story brick walls. He rolled over to the ground, paralyzed, clutching his right forelimb and hissing. The 2x4 was cracked down the center, splintering at the edges. Still, this didn't stop me from dragging it telekinetically across the floor as I marched out of the shadows and loomed above him. My eyes twitched. The shadows were alive with sparks. My sparks. He squealed like an animal giving birth. I could only wish this moment was that holy. He squinted my way, and a bolt of fear shimmered across his glistening eyes. Who in the hay are you? That snarling voice. I suddenly imagined how fitting it would be for rusted shackles to be covering his lips. I adorned his mouth with the full length of the wooden bludgeon instead. With a crack of nebulous thunder, he keeled over, spitting blood into the moonlight. The air smelled of copper, like the rust of the unsung realm. I hovered above him, allowing him a feeble chorus of wheezes and whimpers to the prickly theater surrounding us. Who am I? I monotoned. It doesn't matter. You won't remember. And even if you did, it wouldn't matter. You'll still be the one thing poisoning 3 innocent ponies. A family who has let your anger, ignorance, and bitterness imprison them for far too long. Is this about money? Straight Edge hacked and sputtered my way. I saw his brow furrowed in the dead kiss of night. Even in pain and paralysis, all he had to live on was anger. Just take my damn saddlebag, you friggin' psycho! This is not about bits! I shouted and pressed the sharp edge of the southern bludgeon against his bruised knee. He winced and squirmed as I howled down at him. This is about tranquility. This is about happiness. Things that will never see the light of day in your household, so long as you have the power in that worthless horn of yours to blow your children to lifeless husks. This is about those brats? Straight Edge squeaked, his eyes turning round at Horn in disbelief. Lady, you can have them. Say the word, and I'll do anything. Just stop hurting me. No, I hissed. No, you won't change. My entire body was shivering. Somewhere, the Nightbringer could have been vibrating, and I still wouldn't be able to tell from the divine ring in my blood-rushed ears. Which is why I'm the one who has to make the change, while it's still within my power to do so. What? His face grimaced in confusion. What? Didn't you hear me the first time? I was fuming. My horn had become a hot, emerald beacon. The shattered 2x4 lifted my telekinetic grasp, casting a haunted shimmer across the coffin-thin alleyway. And no pony will know the difference. Not even you. I'm a ghost in this town. History will lurch by, and not a soul will know I was ever here. But you? Who will miss you when you're gone? Please, please, lady. Who is going to miss you? I screamed. He raised his good forelimb over his face, trembling. I was raising the club higher and higher. I seethed. Just smash his horn. Get rid of it. He won't be able to torture his children anymore. He shivered beneath an emerald shadow. I smelled garbage and sweat and urine. Just get rid of the horn. That's all. I clenched my teeth. The air was full of vapors. I saw tempest billowing beyond him, with each pulsing artery. Thousands upon thousands of souls wailed her song forever. It was melancholic, wholesome, righteous. Just get rid of him. Get rid of him. Get rid of... The closet was full of stuffed animals. Moondancer sat in the midst of them, hugging herself, sobbing. I curled up close, but Snip said nothing. She was covered in bruises, confused and alone, with the rain pouring beyond the stairwell like a funeral veil. I pleaded and pleaded for him to tell Twilight and the others the truth, but he refused. The school courtyard was lonely and foggy after she left me. I could never understand pain, could never understand suffering. Straight Edge couldn't understand it either. Even then, even as he stared up at me with a bleeding mouth, waiting for me to deliver the final stroke. Soon, no pony would be left to understand. Except me. My seething melted into heaving breaths. My horn stopped glowing. The alleyway reverberated with the echoes of the falling club as I fell to my haunches. My hooves covered my mouth, but it was not enough to dam up the sobs. They came out of me like scalpels, tearing me wide open and inviting tears to wash away the horror of the moment. They failed. I hyperventilated, cowering against the alley wall across the quivering stallion. His body was branded in my name with bruises and cuts. Every second I spent staring at them, they disappeared beyond the curtain of mist. I was a shivering, crying wreck. Somewhere, a voice whimpered forth. Are you? I squeaked, wheezed, and stammered. Can you feel your legs? He didn't answer me. He was too busy shivering. A cold chill had fallen over the thin space between buildings, and he was spitting blood and vapors into the space between his aching limbs. I gulped. I reached a hoof out towards him. Sir, are you okay? He shook me off, snarling, the whites of his eyes flaring wildly into the moonlight. Get away from me! I jolted from him, gulping a lump down my throat. I'm not... My face cracked. I'm not going to hurt you. Goddess! Goddess, where am I? How did this happen? Please, I promise, I'm not going to hurt you. I tried smiling. I only sobbed more instead. I'm going to get you some help. Please. That's just what I freaking need. Damn it, the Tartarus! I'm going to get you healed. Just... I shook my head and gently shrouded him with emerald magic. Just trust me, Mr. Edge. Shh. You're going to be okay. How did you know? He started, but hissed and pain as I did my expert best to levitate him slowly off the floor. In a slow lurch, I carried him across town under the stagnant stars. It took an arduous amount of time. He forgot me at least 4 times along the way, each time falling into a steeper and steeper panic attack, until the pain and confusion finally overwhelmed him, and the battered stallion fell unconscious. It was the first chance I had to hear my own panting breath, and I detested it more than anything that ever graced my ears before. The next afternoon, I sat on a bench outside Ponyville Central Hospital. My mane was a mess. My hoodie smelled of sweat and tears. I heard the hooves of ponies shuffling to a stop as they trotted by me. They must have been taking their sweet time to stare at my figure. I could only guess. I had my face curled to my forelimbs the entire time. There is no sleeping. There is no falling unconscious to this. My heart pulsed steadily, guiltily, for the better part of the agonizingly long day. For once, the chill of the curse was enough to cool the heated knot forming in my stomach. Finally, once my sanity had stretched to the breaking point, I heard the doors to the hospital's front entrance sliding open. I stood up, rubbing the crusty stains of tears off my cheek. I turned and looked, my lips quivering. Straight Edge limped out. He had a crutch around his right forelimb. His rear legs were bound in gauze, but they managed to carry his weight. A bandage covered half his face. To my mixed shock, he looked far more angry than in pain. Grumbling to himself, he gave the sunny sky a dejected look, and shuffled ahead with an awkward gait. He was in one piece. Never before in my life did I want to rejoice and hide all at once. Instead, I boldly jumped off the bench, winced from stiff legs, and trotted over to him. Mr. Edge? He took an extraordinary amount of time to turn around and glare at me. What in the hay do you want? Are you, I fiddled with the sleeves of my hoodie. Are you okay? I mean, did the doctor say if you suffered anything truly... Ugh! He rushed and tilted away from me. Get away from me, you stinking hobo! Goddess, I hate this town. Please, I must know. For one, no, I'm not okay, he snarled. The damn doctors want to cite me for every bit I got. And for another, why in the flippin' heck would a bum like you care? Get lost, lady, he grumbled. I swear to Luna, I can't swing a dead cat in this world without running into a stupid broad. Arrgh. He growled as he lurched ahead, swearing up a storm beneath his breath before adding, last time I had more than 3 drinks of the Copper Crown. The place is a dump anyways. I sat on my haunches, gazing after him, hugging myself. The afternoon wore on, and I eventually swiveled about and trotted slowly north. The door opened limply to my cabin. Al immediately pattered up and mewed, rubbing my front limbs affectionately. I gazed dully at him. I saw his empty food dish. Without saying a word, I hovered his bag of feed over and poured some of its contents into the container. I was about halfway through the task and my magic went limp. The bag slumped to the ground, and so did I. I sat with my flank to the cot, staring into space. Al's tail flicked. He gazed at me, then at the mess of food. His whiskers twitched, and suddenly I felt those warm paws crawling up my sweaty body as he sniffed my muzzle. I blinked a few times. I looked at him. I weakly raised a hoof up. He rubbed against it, nuzzling me closely and purring. I gulped. Quietly, I brought both forelimbs up and engulfed him in a hug. I felt his warmth close to me, and I began sniffling. Clenching my eyes shut, my lips moved to outrace the tears. Oh, why can't I do it, Alabaster? I whimpered. Oh, why do I have to be so terribly, stupidly grounded? Why can't I do what needs to be done? I've been a ghost for a year now, and I just won't embrace it. I can do so much. I can make a difference. No pony would need to know what it took. No pony would need to know what I've done to make this world more harmonious. Al curled up against me, adjusting his little furry body to my shivering curves. He tilted his orange face up and meowed. A whimper escaped my mouth. I shuddered and said, But I would know. I felt him close and nuzzled him, the tears flowing. I would know. The sobs came softer this time. I released into the feline's purring side, my voice muffled. Heaven help me, Alabaster, but I'm glad you're gone. He won't have to see it when it happens. I raised my head and stared, hyperventilating, towards where the Nightbringer was hidden. You won't have to see me become her. Al innocently clung to me as my tears dried up on their own. An hour or so later, I finished feeding him. Then, as evening fell, I turned the lights out, curled up into the cold of my cot, and finally, fitfully, fell asleep. I strummed my lyre in the crisp morning air, testing each experimental note against the October breeze, in a desperate attempt to eke whatever lonesome dreams I may have had the night before. I didn't have a chance to remember anything, for soon Shirley's voice was merrily chirping in my ear. I'm so glad that Professor Blunoy sent you in the first place, but I'm even happier that you overcame your bout with the flu to show up today. She grinned brighter than the rising sun. In the schoolyard before us, the schoolfools frolicked and played, enjoying their spare time on the playground, before it was time for the start of class. You can't believe how much of a blessing your visit is to my students. They've been dying to hear about equestrian music history ever since I made the announcement that we'd have a guest speaker. Out of curiosity, I tiredly mumbled. What have you been studying all week before I came by? Oh, the usual rudimentary math, geometry, and... Shirley paused, her emerald eyes blinking. Huh. She rubbed her chin, squinting. Or did I teach those geometry lessons last week? It's all a blur for some reason. I took a deep breath. Well, I gave her a weathered smile as I played another tune on the lyre. I'm sure you kept them happy all the same, and that's what matters when it comes to children. Well, happiness is a good thing. Learning, however. We can't forget that, now can we? We can forget many things, I said. I cleared my throat and shrugged. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you mean more to these kids than knowledge. You bring them joy and excitement, Miss Lee. That's something that can't fade from the mind, for it becomes embedded in the heart. She smiled, her ruby cheeks flushing, if that was even possible. I like the way you think, Miss Heartstrings. Or, should I say feel? Her eyes squinted in a brief expression of concern. Might I ask, though, if you're sure that you're in good health? Yes, Miss Cheerily. I'm quite fine. Because if you're still under the weather, I'm sure Professor Blumenz would be more than willing to reschedule until sometime after the upcoming field trip to Canterlot. Trust me, I said with a hint of a growl. Clearing my throat, I gave her the most serene smile I could manage. I've never been more lucid in my life. She blinked at that, smiling sheepishly. Well, alrighty then. I guess we could all do with a bit of... Her head pivoted aside and her eyes lit up. Big Mac, you're here. Yup. Oh, and you brought more lumber for the upcoming winter. She shot up from the picnic table beside me. Here, let me help you with those. She turned and winked at me. Excuse me just one moment, Miss Heartstrings. This shouldn't take long. Just, don't wander too far, I remarked. Perish the thought. Ahem. She trotted over to the big red stallion as he stood beside the wood box next to the school building. Now be careful. I know you're a big fellow, but at any point I can get splinters. He merely chuckled and led the school teacher to lend a hoof. I watched from afar. I was still strumming on the lyre, but was barely aware of the melody I was making, if any. After my first night's sleep in days, the entire morning felt like a dreamy haze. Then, just like any other vision, I had a wake-up call in the sound of a familiar, rasping voice. How many times do I have to tell you, Snails? Snips grumbled as he waddled within proximity of the picnic table. I don't want to play any games right now. Aw, come on. Snails bounded after him, pouting. But you never want to hang out anymore. I'm just tired, Snips grumbled. And if I want to get better at pop quizzes, I gotta study and stuff. Snails' face contorted in confusion. Since when were you so concerned about quizzes? Who cares? Snip snapped at his tall companion. So maybe I don't want to be goofing off all the time. Maybe I don't want to be worthless. Snails leaned his head curiously to the side. You're not worthless, Snips, he muttered. You're my bestest friend. Snips closed his eyes, revealing a slight bruise along his left lid. He sighed and grumbled. Oh, we can hang out later. Okay, Snails? Go somewhere and chase butterflies. Or whatever it is you do when I'm not around to keep you out of trouble. Butterflies? Snail stood up straight, blinking steadily. He suddenly gasped, his entire body jumping. I gotta go save the flowers! He scampered across the busy playground in a tan blur. Ugh. Snips waddled over until he all but bumped into me. Oh, music. He looked up at me, or more appropriately my lyre, squinting. Hey, you must be that musician that Cheerleader keeps telling the class about. I looked calmly at him. I didn't say anything. Not at first. But, like, I thought you were too sick to show up or something. After a breath, I gave him a weathered smile. I got better. Oh, he nodded. They gazed towards the grass beneath his hooves. That's good, I guess. I couldn't miss an opportunity to teach a schoolroom full of fools, I said, strumming another random tune. Sharing music is the joy of life, and I feel that every pony deserves to be happy. If you say so, Snips muttered, toying at the ground with one hoof and then the other. You picked a silly place to do it. Oh? Yeah, school is so boring, he muttered. Now if this was a stage, or the Ponyville talent show, or... Do you hate school? I asked. Well... His brow furrowed. No, I guess not. I mean, yeah, sure, it's boring. But I get to see a bunch of other fools. I get to play jokes on classmates, he snickered. I get to hang out with Snails, even if he's a coolest dunce half the time. It's relaxing, isn't it? I said. I like a good song that keeps changing, but stays gentle all the time. He bit his lip. I heard a sniffling sound, and his head tilted away from my eyes as he muttered, Relaxing is good. I looked at the lyre, then at him. When was the last time you got a chance to listen to music? He was still looking away from me. His little shoulders shook. My mom used to sing it to me, but she doesn't do lullabies anymore. No? Nah, he sighed. It wouldn't be right. Wouldn't be right? He was silent. You remember them at least, right? I asked. Do they relax you to think of them? He turned to look at me. His eyes were misty. Listen to me. I leaned over, smiling softly. The music doesn't ever have to die. Not as long as we can stand to be happy, wherever we are. It's what we deserve, after all. Each and every one of us. Slowly, his face reflected my smile back. His tail flicked. You're really gonna share some songs with the class today? Mm-hmm, I said with a nod. It's the least I can do for you, kiddo. He nodded slowly, gazing towards the school building where Cheerleader was helping Big Mac with the lumber. I think I'd like that. Hey, boy, come here. Snips's body instantly jolted. I saw his teeth clench. With a shiver, he spun about, briefly blurting, Gotta go! I watched as he scampered out of the schoolyard, up a grassy knoll, and into the shadow of a haunting stallion along the dirt path. My breath left me and I stopped strumming the lyre. You deaf brat! Straight Edge grumbled from where he stood on the side of the road with his crutches. I said, get your flank over here. Snips was frozen in place. For a moment, I didn't understand why, until I saw him shiver from a cold chill running up his body. Huh? Dad? How did... What are you waiting for? I don't know. I was just... what was I doing? You come to me when I call for you, you hear? Snips hung his horned head. Yes, Dad. Don't yes, Dad me, Straight Edge grumbled, that motion with his bandaged neck. Shut up and come along. We're going home. Snips's face scrunched up in confusion. Home? Yeah, you heard me. Home. But... He turned and looked over his shoulder at the playground, and the bright red building beyond. It's a school day. Should I really be going home? Straight Edge spun about, his eyes burning like hot coals. What have I told you about sassing me in public? His horn glowed and there was a fierce, telekinetic tug to Snips' forelimb, dragging the colt towards the adult unicorn. I got battered by goddess knows what on my way home last night. I'm already paying the doctors at my ears, and now I just found out from my boss at the construction site that I'm not allowed to work until my leg heals up. Which means you're going to have to be at home to help your dear old father around the house. But... You gonna give me lip? After years of me cleaning up after your crap and buying the food on your plate, you owe me, boy. Don't worry about school. I'm sure your mom has some books for you to learn from at home. Celestine knows she spends all the dang time sitting on her flank reading them. Okay, Snips dully murmured, hanging his head. Ugh. Straight Edge began limping towards the center of town, wincing with each twist of the crutches against his right forelimb. And let's not drag our tails, you hear me? This is embarrassing enough as it is. Not that I expect you to understand any. I saw them beginning to march away. I turned and looked the opposite way. Shirley and Big Mac were finishing up the lumber, completely oblivious. I could have said something. I could have rushed over and told them about Straight Edge whisking Snips away. I could have done so many bold and dramatic things. I chose to do something else instead. With a calm breath, I levitated the lyre in front of me and loudly, but steadily, strummed a very dear tune to the October winds. Straight Edge and Snips were trotting further down the dirt road. I was starting to have a hard time making out the colt's cutie mark. The muttering curses of his father became a distant hush. Patiently, persistently, I played through the entirety of the song, allowing its melodic notes to rise and fall. I watched with dry eyes. My lungs were frozen with the chill of my ghostly curse. And then, with beauty that rivaled a tiny candle being lit, Snips's body froze as well. He stopped in his tracks, his tiny ears flicking with each rhythmic pitch of Penumbra's echo. Any twitch or shiver to his limbs instantly melted. He stayed put where he was. Straight Edge noticed this, of course. Perhaps it was the absence of Snips's pitter-pattering hooves. Perhaps it was the fact that another body wasn't close by to echo his grumbling curses. He swiveled about, blinked at the empty space in the path behind him, and ultimately turned around with a confused frown. Boy, didn't you hear me? I said we're going home, and that's final. Snips didn't move. An October breeze wafted by, carrying the sound of Alabaster's soothing composition. Colts and fillies giggled in the background. I hung in a breathless lurch, waiting. And it happened. No, Snip said. Straight Edge turned and loomed viciously over the tiny unicorn. What did you say? It happened again. No. I exhaled, only to produce a sharp gasp as Straight Edge flung his crutch down to the dirt, leaned over the petite colt, and hideously snarled. Boy, I'm not gonna let you push my buttons. You're not gonna let me do anything, Snip suddenly barked up at him. The shivers had returned to his body, and they were righteous quivers of fury. You're just gonna shout at me and throw me around and call Mom names and make me feel bad about it all. Shut your stinking trap, Straight Edge raised a hoof. Do you know who you're talking to? Yes, Snip shrieked, tears falling from his face as he growled and hissed. I know how much you hate me and Mama Windsong. I know how grumpy you get for no good reason. And I'm not going home to that. Not again. Ponies should be happy. He whimpered and yelled at the same time. Foals' heads were turning. The playground was going silent in the echo of his divine outburst. All ponies deserve happiness. I don't care how angry you are. I won't let you stop me from being happy anymore. Boy, if you open your mouth one more time... Get away from me! Snip shouted. His teary eyes clenched shut as he started howling over and over and over. You're a bad father. You're a bad father. You're a bad... Schrader slammed his hoof across Snips's horn. With a glowing telekinesis, he lifted the sputtering colt up by the neck. Damn you, brat! I'm gonna do what I should have done the day that stupid wench popped you out. Colts gasped. Fillies were sobbing. I heard Scootaloo's fearless voice shouting something over and over. I did absolutely nothing. Nothing but play the echo. Shirley had trotted over, drawn by the hellish racket. What in Equestria's name is going on over there? She gasped, her eyes flashing wide. Good heavens! Snips! Mr. Edge, what are you doing? Stay out of this, Straight Edge growled. Family business. He lifted his nips in the air once more. He can't breathe, Cheerily shrieked. She spun around, then yelled towards the schoolhouse. Big Mac, quick! He's going to strangle Snips! Nope, Big Mac growled, his teeth gritting. On thundering hooves, he galloped across the schoolyard. Dust kicked up in a storm as he barreled directly into Straight Edge, body slamming the yelping unicorn into the dirt road. Ah! Straight Edge sneered. What the? Get off me, you lousy hick! Big Mac's response was an iron hoof bucked through Straight's teeth. Ah! Woohoo! Applebloom jumped up and down, pumping a forelimb. You show that creep, Mackie! Scootaloo joined her cheers. Sweetbelle trembled and covered her eyes, while Rumble hugged her comfortingly, smiling from a distance. You lousy piece of farm filth! Straight Edge is rambling, raving, his eyes bright and murderous. He could only struggle and moan as Big Mac shoved him prone to the soil. Grr! Worst town ever! I'll rip all your hearts out, so help me! Urgh! His mouth ate dirt as Big Mac applied his weight into the back of his head. In the meantime, Cheerleader was rushing over to Snips' quivering body. She squatted down and scooped him up. Snips? Snips, you poor, poor thing. Can you breathe? Snips sputtered, gasped for breath. He curled up in the cheerleader's embrace and nodded weakly. Yes, he murmured. Please, keep him away from me. He's so horrible. All the time. So horrible. Oh, Snips. She leaned in and nuzzled him, as if he was her own foal. Absolutely. You have my word. He won't touch you ever again. Her eyes were moist as she stammered. If I had only known sooner. Oh, good heavens, you poor thing. Mom, Windsong. He shivered and clung to her between desperate sobs. They need. He won't touch them either. Don't you worry one bit. She looked at the line of gaping foals. Clearing her tears, she managed to summon one of them. Snails, come here. The tall colt wandered over, shivering, staring at his sobbing friend with wide eyes. Yes, Miss Cheerily? Snips is going to be okay, but I need you to run into town and fetch the police. Can you do that for me? For your friend? Sure thing. Good. Don't worry. Big Mac has things taken care of here. Now go, Snails. Run. Snails ran into the center of town. Beyond earshot of Straight Edge's frustrated growls. Cheerily cradled Snips closer, smiling and murmuring to him. Shh. It's okay, darling. You're safe now. Don't be afraid. Not afraid. Snips hiccuped, covering his wet eyes with forelimbs. Not afraid anymore. Not afraid anymore. Shh. It's all right, Snips, she said tearfully. It's all right to cry. Just let it out. It's all right. Penumbra's echo finally stopped, only because I couldn't manage it anymore. I was clinging my lyre to my chest, hugging it like Cheerily hugged Snips. My head tilted towards the morning sky as my face cracked, letting loose the first of several heavy sobs. My lips stretched between a smile and a grimace, as I clenched my eyes shut and whimpered to the sky. Two little words squeaked through my teeth, over and over again, until I no longer had the strength to remember who exactly I was thinking anymore. And neither did I care. Eventually, the police came by to assist Big Mac with a raging unicorn. The schoolfools gathered around Cheerily to help comfort Snips. And a certain ghost who may have never been there to begin with was suddenly gone. Only the music remained. There's some news about Straight Edge, Twilight Sparkle said at a table in Sugarcube Corner a few days later. You mean that unicorn jerk who was beating up his kids or whatnot? Rainbow Dash paused and sipping her soda to frown. Did they hang him from the gallows? Rainbow Dash, honestly. Twilight Sparkle made a face. What is this? The Solar Civil War era? She calmly folded up a newspaper and gazed at Rainbow Dash and Applejack. They decided not to give him bail. He's remaining under lock and key until they can get him into court. There was some dirt dug up on the workhorse, and apparently Mr. Edge is wanted for insurance fraud back in Manhattan. The Inquestian Bureau of Investigations has been looking all over for him for years. Guess they never thought to check in Ponyville. In other words, He's gotta go through a lot of lousy red tape before anybody punishes him for treating his fools like punching bags. Rainbow Dash grunted. Where's the justice in that? I don't think it's anything worth complaining about, Rainbow, Applejack said. What matters is that he's been caught red-hoofed, and ain't nothing more he can do to them poor ponies he was living with. Yeah, but still, it just really stinks, Rainbow Dash said, folding her forelimbs and frowning. Doesn't it bother you guys to know that he was living in our very own neighborhood, abusing his own flesh and blood, and none of us were any the wiser? I mean, how does junk like that happen in this day and age? Wouldn't it, like, freak the heck out of Princess Celestia to hear about this kind of stuff? Twilight took a deep breath, fiddling with her hose on the edge of the table. If Celestia can't stop every bad thing from happening, what makes us think any single one of us can do any better? Yeah, but... Rainbow Dash sat back with a slump, sighing. When crud like this makes the light of day, it makes me wonder if we're not trying hard enough. I mean, are we the elements of harmony or aren't we? Oh, don't get all mopey like that, Sugar Cube, Object said with a gentle smile. Heaven knows, you're the bravest, most thoughtful pony in town. The first hint you catch of bad things happening, you'd be there to play hero in a jiffy. She turned to wink at Twilight. Reckon that's the same for every pony seated here, and the rest of the gang to boot. There's no perfect way to make a perfect world, Twilight Sparkle said. Making life harmonious is just like making friends. She smiled sweetly. There's bound to be a lot of bumps along the way. And most likely, every pony in Ponyville is more like a stands ever since Straight showed his true colors. Applejack turned towards Rainbow Dash. If you want to get started playing Neighborhood Watch, Rainbow, now is your chance. Yeah, I guess it is. She lifted up towards the ceiling on flapping wings. Say, I don't normally suggest this, but what if we call the other girls over to the library for a special meeting or something? I think it'd be totally cool if we set up some community thing to, I don't know, try to reach out to families around town about what's happened. What do you think? I, for one, find that to be a brilliant idea. Tide Sparkle hopped up with a grin. And I think you deserve the honor of setting it up, Rainbow. Darn tootin', Applejack added. She stood up and planted her hat on her head. Where to, Cap'n my Cap'n? Let's round up Rarity from the boutique first, Rainbow said, pointing towards the door as the three made their exit. You know how long it takes her to get ready for these last-second get-togethers. Pfft, that fussy filly. If it was the end of the world, she'd be fretting about her eyelashes. Well, thankfully, we won't be having to hold back the apocalypse anytime soon, Twilight said. The three friends giggled as they left. Passing by them, several young foals scampered into the heart of Shigube Corner. It was a veritable parade of school-age ponies. Shirley stuck her head in through the door and called out to them. Now, don't spend all of your lunch money and only get fruit or juice. We have a long train ride ahead, and I can't have my little ponies bouncing completely off the walls. Yes, Miss Shirley, the group chanted back in unison. Shirley giggled and stood in the doorway, speaking with Big Mac and another chaperone. Oh, Strawberry Supreme! Strawberry Supreme! Snails hopped up and down while a few other kids huffed bits over to the counter at Mrs. Cake, receiving juice boxes and apple slices in return. We gotta combine our bits to get the Strawberry Supreme juice. What? Sniffs retorted, snapping him a crazy look. But it's just one juice box. I know it's big, but how are we both gonna share it? We'll buy 2 straws. Snails, Snips gasped. You're a genius. But, oh, drat. Snips fiddled the saddlebag on his portly haunches. Oh, we're both one bit short. I think we gotta have the smaller juice boxes. That means no Strawberry Supreme. Aww. Snails' ears drooped as his muzzle hung low to the floor. Just then, 3 golden coins landed between the 2 colts. There you go. Get yourself 2 Strawberry Supremes. The 2 young unicorns gasped at the bits. They turned and looked at me. Whoa! Lady, are you serious? I smiled softly from where I sat in my chair with a lyre. I'm always serious, I said, then chuckled. To a fault. I motioned towards a distant counter. Knock yourselves out. Sweet, Snails exclaimed. Here, Snails! Stim slid the bits over to him. Go buy us the Strawberry Supremes, and all the straws you can fit into your mouth. Sure thing, buddy. The taller colt grabbed the coins in his teeth and galloped towards a grinning, cheerful Mrs. Cake. You going somewhere special today? I asked. Snit spun to look at me. Huh? Oh. He smiled, his tail flicking excitedly. Miss Cheerily is taking us on a field trip to the Candlelight Gardens. We're gonna see a huge maze and a bunch of statues and flags and stuff. Wow, I said with a nod. Sounds really boring. He broke into giddy laughter. Yeah, well. He exhaled calmly and glanced at the far wall of the eatery. I never used to go on field trips. He gulped. My dad would say that they were just a waste of time. That doesn't sound very nice. Or sensible. Yeah, well, that's my dad for ya. Snips momentarily grumbled. A joyful smile returned to his lips. But I don't have to worry about him anymore. He's somewhere else right now, and the family's better off. I'm... I'm sorry, I said softly. I shouldn't have pressed. No, it's okay. I just... Snips breathed deeply and looked up at me. I just never knew that things could feel so weightless, you know? I feel like I have Pegasus wings hidden beneath my skin, 'cause it's like I'm flying. I nodded. So, you're happy then? Happiest I've been in a while, Snip said. And so's my mom and sister. We're staying at Snails' family's house, and they're all so nice and fun to be with. Plus, a bunch of ponies came to help my mom. They said that she's going to get better, that they're going to help get rid of her sickness, and... Hey, he blinked, staring fixedly at me. I smiled. This happiness you feel? You can get other ponies to feel it, in ways that your dad never did. His lips hung open for a spell, and soon he murmured, I know. He gulped. For a while there, I was afraid that... Shh. I leaned forward and smiled at his eye level. We all have plenty of time, kiddo, to become that which we want to be, and not that which we fear. Snip stared up at me. His next smile was a warm thing, like one of Cheerilee's cutie marks. At around that time, Snail scampered up, levitating 2 containers. Juice boxes, he triumphantly chirped. At the exit to the eatery, Cheerilee was calling forth, Okay, my little ponies. Time to go. The train won't wait. We gotta go, Snips. Yeah, just 1 second. The stout unicorn turned around. Hey, ma'am, thanks for the talk. I think... He blinked. The space before him was empty. Ma'am? Who were you talking to, Snips? He teetered suddenly. With chattering teeth, he rubbed his forelimbs together. Yeesh. Did somebody leave the freezers open in this place? Snips, we gotta go. Cheerilee's frowning at us. I hate it when Cheerilee frowns. Right. Onwards to Canterlot. Snail scampered out of Sugar Corner, as did the rest of the schoolfuls. Snips followed up the rear, balancing the juice box atop his head, as well as a song that he hummed in the pleasant air of the place. A very relaxing tune. I hear the knock at the dormitory door, and somehow I know it can't be any pony else but her. I trot over and open it. Nothing can prepare me for how miserable, how utterly cold and lonely she looks. Moon Dancer! I exclaim. It is true shock. I rest a hoof over my chest as she fidgets in the sorority hallway. I gulp and smile nervously. Why don't you come in? She squirms where she stands. Are your roommates? We're alone. The girls are out partying on the edge of the Shadow District. She finally trudges in, dragging a saddlebag limply behind her. You should be with them. I'd rather be here, really. I slowly close the door behind her. Besides, those bat ponies freak me out in that side of town. Liar, she grumbles, pacing across the shadowed room. You're just like Twilight. Anything you fear has an academic buffer. She looks with disgust at the cluster of junk lying around the place. Blessed Luna, your roommates are a bunch of slobs. Moon Dancer. Or did a certain mint green unicorn lose her ladylike grace since last time we chatted? Moon Dancer, I know why you're back in Canterlot, I say as I trot towards her. I raise a hoof up to her shoulder, but I think twice about making contact. Biting my lip, I hesitate, then say, When I heard, I visited your mom. She gulps, She hangs her head. I know. I blink in surprise. You spoke with her? Mm-hmm. She nods slowly. Just now. The room is silent for a while. I shuffle my hooves and circle through the gray shadows until I'm standing in front of her. Her violet and red mane is so straight. Her violet eyes are so jaded. This is my good friend. And yet it isn't. I try to keep my voice steady. Moon Dancer, You know when I try to say things, I only ramble on endlessly. You were right all along about me. You always were. I never went through all the horrible things you did. How could I possibly relate? And furthermore, what's worth relating to? She mutters. It's very simple, Lyra. She tilts her head up and stares blankly at me. He's dead. He croaked, kicked the bucket, knocked on death's door. Heck, Lyra, you're a poet, musician, whatever. Describe it any way you want. She takes a deep breath and marches over to stare out the window. She doesn't bother to push the curtains open. He's gone. He's gone And what, Moon Dancer? I talked to Mom. I even paid Twilight's folks a visit. And yet none of them could help me. Not like you could. She rubs her other forelimb with a hoof and whimpers the next part out. Like you always could. How? I stammer, honestly perplexed, flabbergasted even. Moon Dancer, really? I gave a bitter chuckle. How did I ever help you? You were there, Lyra. You were always there, each time I needed you. And even the times when I didn't, or pretended that I didn't. And I treated you like dirt for no good reason. Moon Dancer. I shake my head and look at the carpet. You didn't treat me like... I treated you like dirt, she snarls, her voice starting to shake. I crushed you and ditched you because I was so angry, and so... She shudders visibly, her back hunching. So scared that this day would come, and I would have to tell you. Tell you. I looked up, concerned. Tell me what, Moon Dancer? She turns around. Her eyes are glittering with tears. That I feel so horrible. She inhales sharply, her face grimacing. He's dead, and now that he is, I feel so horrible, Lyra. And I don't understand why. Well, he was your father, Moon Dancer. He was a jerk. He was a sadist and an abuser and a dirty, dirty creep. And now that he's dead, I should be happy, but I can't feel it, Lyra. You say that you can never relate? I was his danged daughter, and I can't understand either. How does that even make sense? Moon Dancer, I don't think you give yourself enough credit, I exclaim. I know you must think that the two of you are always cut from the same cloth, but... But what? Moon Dancer sobs. She staggers slightly, running a hoof over her face. Lyra, he was everything bad and horrible in my life. He was like the scale ahead for all things awful. She hiccups and hugs herself. I think the real reason I never settled down with a stallion yet, or even gotten a cult friend, is that I'm afraid, Lyra. You know I've always wanted kids of my own someday. But how? Her eyes clench shut and she shudders. How could a pony like me do anything but mess that up? Oh, Moon Dancer. I smile and clear the gap between us finally, flinging my forelimbs around her. You would have the best, most healthy, most fortunate foals in the world. I've been so scared for so long, Lyra. She clings to me, burying her face in my shoulder. I don't want anything like that to happen. Celestia, help me. I don't ever want to become him. Shh. You won't become him, Moon Dancer, I say, holding her close. I won't let you. You hear me? I won't let you become him. She sniffles, sobbing and laughing at the same time as she surrenders to my embrace. Thank you, Lyra. I just need you to be here. That's what I've always needed. Just for you to be here. Shh. I nuzzle Moondancer, rocking her gently as I murmur into her ear. And I always will be. I smile. Always. As the requiem played in full, I stood alone, a dot of warmth in the center of the unsung realm. Slowly, I tilted my face up. The shock of ponies on either side of me barely stirred. The thunder was low. The spears within spears loomed overhead, as they always did, an eerie accompaniment to the fluctuating tempests. I know that you're here, I said calmly, clinging to the Nightbringer. What I don't know, and what I'll never know, is just how long you've been here. I gulped and murmured. Just like no pony knows how long I've been haunting the grounds to which your curse has anchored me. The spears floated in place. There was no song, no lightning, no stirring whatsoever. I bravely continued. I've been a very fortunate pony. I wake up every day knowing that. It's what makes the curse so potent, but... I hesitated slightly, then hoarsely spoke. I also know that I've been a very blind pony, and an ignorant one. I look back at my life before all of this happened, and I think... No. I know that I'm better for all that's happened to me. I'm wiser, stronger. I clenched my eyes shut and saw straight Edge's frightened face in the midnight of my mind. But I'm far from perfect. A few of the ponies rattled in the links of their chains. Mists of water flew coldly over the platform before rejoining the chaotic nether. I want to become better. I want to be a good pony, to reach out to those around me. I bit my lip. My eyes opened from the tears springing forth as I shuddered and looked up at her throne, whimpering. I want to bless others in this world. I want to leave my mark, if only to guide ponies along the path towards harmony and righteousness. And now that so much has happened in my life, and I've learned what I've learned, I hiccuped at another sob and squeaked forth. I can't do a single thing. Not without a miracle or an event of pure happenstance. I clung tighter to the Nightbringer, falling on my knees as I gazed up at the spears, teary-eyed. Is it so selfish of me, so unholy of a demand, that I ask for yet another miracle? I gulped and tried to keep my breath even. Please, please speak to me. Sing to me. I ask of you. I beg of you. Come and play the duet with me. Help me break free from this curse. And maybe, just maybe, I can find a way to help you too. I gulped and stammered. Because no pony, mortal or immortal, would live in a place like this unless it was their prison. And though I may never want to become you, that doesn't mean... I smiled weakly through the tears. That doesn't mean that I can't try and understand you. The spheres hovered coldly ahead. I saw strobes of light, distant and erratic, illuminating the links of the firmaments beyond. Please, I squeaked again. All I can do is be here. Won't you help me? Won't you free me? My limbs went limp, and I almost dropped the Nightbringer right then and there. What is it that keeps you from at least talking to me? Must we play this game of hide-and-seek for eternity? Must you ignore me? I beg of you. What's keeping us from finishing the nocturne? Just then, the lightning bolts in the distance doubled, tripled. I heard the rattling of chains. They intensified all around me, forming a cacophony of passion and chaos, until the chanting chorus of every shock of pony in every corner of the unsung realm broke through, moaning the same hideous phrase over and over again. Her beloved wakes! Her beloved wakes! Her beloved wakes! I gasped, my wide eyes staring at all the quivering equines as they thrashed and howled around me. Her beloved! Her beloved! Her beloved! Her beloved! They were surrounding me, lashing at me and each other, writhing in agony and fear and joy all at once. Overwhelmed, I scrunched down on the ground and telekinetically strummed penumbras echo in quick fashion. Before their chains and chants could drown me, the unsung realm flew away in a blur, and I was once again situated on the lantern-lit floor of my cellar, surrounded by dust and the echoing sounds of my panting voice. I sat up, running a shivering hoof through my mane as my tears dried and my voice found its way back into my throat. Her... her beloved wakes? My brow furrowed. But what? The air was still. I felt as though the world had stopped rotating. Yet again, nothing had become of the trip to purgatory. With a sigh, I bagged the Nightbringer, I extinguished the lantern, and trudged up the steps to the surface. Something doesn't make sense. She didn't try blasting me off the face of the platform that time. Did I actually reach her? I sighed again. Alabaster, how did you dwell in that place for a single day, much less 1,000 years? No wonder you lost your mind. I opened the door to my yard. Instead of sunlight, I was greeted with a pie to the face. Gah! I stumbled back, reeling. Clumps of cherry, custard, and whipped cream covered my horn, eyes, and muzzle. Wincing, I brought 2 hooves up and wiped the edible material out of sight. For the love of Celestia, I was already growling. Pinkie Pie, if you're tossing baked goods at random again. I froze as soon as my eyes could blink. There were 4 more pies where the first one came from, and they were levitating over the lawn behind my cabin in tight formation. I saw more things floating in the distance. Squinting, I made out what was undeniably a flock of winged pigs. To my horror, there were spherical clusters of landscape floating, embedded with trees and upside-down cottages. Above this chaotic sprawl, bright clouds of pink fluff lingered, occasionally precipitating disgusting brown sheets of rain onto a Ponyville, fragmented into labyrinthine facsimilies of what it was just hours ago. It looked far too goofy to be true, too haunting and bizarre to be taken any way but seriously. In a way, it looked perfectly like the end of the world. I looked at the mess above and beyond. Slowly, I tilted around and gazed down the steps to my cellar. I blinked, hearing several eerie words repeating in my mind. In a flash, I galloped towards the cabin, flinging the last flakes of pie off my face. Even an entire year of understanding new things couldn't prepare me for what happened next.